Chapter 3946. The Koreans were afraid of and hated the American soldiers, but they didn't dare to let them leave. Therefore, they often saw the American soldiers in Korea. This could be considered a consequence of history. The whole world knew that the entire Korean peninsula was divided between the Russians and the Americans at the end of World War II. The Russians occupied the north, and the Americans occupied the south. These two superpowers directly used the peninsula of the Koreans and the Kim family as a strategic buffer zone. Some people might not understand what a strategic buffer zone was. To put it simply, if two mafia bosses were going to fight, it was fine to beat up the bosses, but they had to get rid of the hooligans standing in front of them first. The Koreans were equivalent to the minions of the American pirate king, cannon fodder. The Jean family in the northern peninsula was first supported by Old Harry. This was undeniable. Even in Hwaxia, Old Harry had helped them a lot. Of course, Old Harry also had his own calculations and ideas. He would not play for nothing. Although the historical issue had passed a long time ago, the Americans still wanted to play hegemony. To be a hegemon, one had to know some martial arts. They had to make sure that others didn't have enough to eat. China's development was too fast. Of course, the Americans couldn't sit still. Look at Asia. From Japan to Korea, to the forces they cultivated on Taiwan Island, and finally to Southeast Asia. It was a semicircle. It was needless to say who was trapped. Actually, it was very difficult for ordinary people to understand the feelings the Koreans had for the Americans. When the American soldiers left, the Koreans were really sad. It was as if their parents had died. It was as if their parents had died. They would definitely be too embarrassed to talk about how Korea recovered after World War II. Because after the war, the Koreans directly used the women in their country as weapons to promote the rapid economic development of their country. They encouraged them to work as prostitutes. Who were they serving? Of course, it was the American soldiers. The Koreans' act of using the women in their country to recover their country's economy was really unimaginable. Moreover, in order to let the American soldiers experience better service, the Koreans specially set up English classes and etiquette classes for the women in their country to learn for free. It was all for the sake of serving the American soldiers better. Who didn't know what the American soldiers looked like? Moreover, when the American Empire recruited soldiers, was it really like what was shown in their heroic movies? Every single one of them was like a hero in a movie? It wasn't like that at all. Most of the men in the American Empire were poor and poor. Many of them were just hooligans in the country. These guys were all tall and strong, and all of them were strong, especially those with black blood. They were particularly obsessed with the relationship between men and women. Soldiers who often participated in wars abroad did not have the opportunity to marry and have children, so these people's physiological needs were unusually strong. It was no longer news that the American soldiers had played with the local Korean women. Therefore, the war had not only cast a shadow on the Korean women, but also the shadow of artillery fire. The chaos in Korea caused many people to have no fixed place to live, and their quality of life was poor. The women had no choice but to serve the American soldiers. During this period, many mixed-blood children were born in Korea. Obviously, under such a background, the Korean women tried their best to curry favor with the American soldiers in exchange for money. However, due to the protests in the United States, the soldiers stopped going in and out of the Korean brothels. However, the Korean women who used to serve the American soldiers could no longer return to their former identities. The trauma left in their hearts could not be healed until now. It was obvious from how the Korean men treated the women in their country. The gentle plots in television dramas were all nonsense. In reality, there were hundreds of videos of female celebrities serving in hotels. Those who lived in Korea for a period of time would realize that the Koreans were really obscene. After drinking 2 cups of low-quality soju, they would start to say extremely obscene things to the women eating with them. That was because they looked down on the women in their country and did not treat them as equals. Perhaps many people did not understand. Since the American soldiers had caused such a bad impact on the Koreans, both men and women, why were the American soldiers still stationed in Korea? In fact, the American soldiers stationed in Korea were mainly to control Hwaxia and Russia. With Korea's current military, economy, technology, and international status, the only one who could defeat them was their neighbor, Old Kim. Old Kim's economy and technology could be said to be very backward. His military was basically semi-mechanized. If he really wanted to fight, he still had to rely on the tactic of numbers. However, in the face of Hua and Russia, Korea could not afford to offend any of them. If he wanted to raise his head in front of Hua and Russia, he needed someone to support him. Moreover, at this time, Old Kim came out to stir up trouble and messed up the whole situation. Now, Korea's most advanced fighter plane flew around Old Kim's house, and Old Kim did not even do anything. Was it possible to shoot a plane with a pistol? Old Kim's family should at least have ground-to-air anti-aircraft guns first. Old Kim's political reputation in the world was not very good. Now that he had arrogantly started to develop nuclear weapons, even Hua was estranged from Old Kim's family. Speaking of which, Kim Jong-un's development of nuclear weapons was also because he had a guilty conscience. He knew that he could not compete with Korea in any way, so he developed nuclear weapons to intimidate Korea and the United States. But then again, if the Kim family really dared to use nuclear weapons, the United States would wipe them out in less than half an hour. At that time, Hua would be too embarrassed to interfere. Anyway, in the current situation, the American soldiers were still quite popular in Korea. At least, the Koreans respected and feared them. Due to the presence of the American soldiers, the Koreans who were drinking coffee in the shop left one after another. The American soldiers were also very proud. They quickly noticed Ruan Qingxuang and Zhua Meiyan. Several American soldiers also thought that the two of them were Korean women. Seeing such beautiful Korean women, how could these American soldiers not flirt with a few times? After all, no one would dare to do anything to them. One of the American soldiers stood up with a smile and walked up to Ruan Qingxuang and Zhua Meiyan. The two of them ignored him. "We want to sit here. Do you two want to sit on top of us, or do you want us to sit on top of you?" The American soldier shamelessly said in English. They knew that the Koreans more or less knew some English. After all, they had been colonized for so many years. "I don't plan to give up my seat. You better get the hell away from me." Zhua Meiyan was not so good-tempered. She glared at him fiercely. The Koreans had a very serious accent when speaking English. They would definitely not admit it, but the American soldier knew that the Koreans could not change their accent. However, he did not hear any accent in Zhua Meiyan's voice. At this moment, the American soldier was a little confused. He asked in confusion, "You're not Korean?" "I'm from Hua Xia." Zhua Meiyan raised her voice. Ruan Qingxuang was a little nervous. After all, they were only two girls. The American soldiers in front of them might really do something to them. However, things were not like that. After Zhua Meiyan finished speaking, the American soldier standing in front of them hesitated for a moment. In the end, he chose to turn around and leave. The American soldiers sitting there did not seem to have any intention to say anything. In front of the two girls, the American soldiers actually chose to shut their mouths. When they chose to shut up, Ruan Qingxuang felt a little incredulous. That was it. Perhaps some people always thought that Hua Xia was not strong enough. However, reality proved that was not the case. Even the American soldiers did not dare to be arrogant in front of Hua Xia people. The American soldiers only dared to be arrogant in front of the Koreans because their commanding officer did not give them any orders. They did not dare to be arrogant in front of the Hua Xia people because their commanding officer had given them orders not to provoke the Hua Xia people. Absolutely not. If they provoked the Hua Xia people, no one would protect them. Therefore, the American soldiers were much more restrained in front of the Hua Xia people. This was the so-called strong country, strong people. Chapter 39-47. Although the American soldiers were not as impudent in front of Zhua Meiyan and Ruan Qingxuang, they did not restrain themselves in front of the Korean owner of the coffee shop. They still reprimanded the owner without holding back. Someone even spat out the coffee in his mouth onto the ground and questioned the owner of the coffee shop what they were drinking. The owner of the coffee shop had no choice but to come out. She was a rather pretty Korean woman. She apologized profusely when the American soldiers reprimanded her. "I asked for an American coffee. What is this thing you're giving me? What kind of American-style coffee is this?" The American soldier pointed at the half-empty cup of coffee and said, "Have a taste and see what this is." Of course, the woman would not drink the leftover coffee. She apologized carefully. "I'm really sorry. It's true that we didn't do a good job. Please give me a chance to make up for my mistake. I'll make another cup for you." Make another cup? It's wrong once, it's still wrong 10 times. The American soldier said, "You're just using low-quality instant black coffee to pass it off as freshly ground coffee." The woman quickly explained, "No, we didn't. We did use high-quality coffee beans. Maybe it doesn't suit your taste. Are you saying that there's something wrong with our mouths?" The American soldier glared at her. No, that's not what I meant." The woman quickly shook her head. "We just want to explain. We're sorry. It's all our fault. Please forgive us." Koreans, regardless of gender, were very sincere when they apologized. They would always bow at a 90-degree angle. They were very sincere. When Ruan Qingxuang saw this woman's expression, she could not help but recall the time when she had opened the medicinal cuisine restaurant. She had also had to swallow her pride in the face of some rude and unreasonable customers. This feeling made her feel sad. However, just as Ruan Qingxuang was about to speak up for the woman, Zhuo Meiyan reached out and stopped her. Zhuo Meiyan knew why she could not hold it in. "Don't forget why we're here. We're not here to help them solve their problems. We're here to do our own things." Ruan Qingxuang finally controlled her emotions. "If you don't believe me, you can follow me inside. I promise that all of our coffee is freshly ground," the woman continued to explain. A few of the American soldiers immediately let out a bone-chilling laugh. "Ha ha ha ha. Go in and take a look? Where is it? What do you think? Is it here?" One of the bold men reached out to pull the woman's collar. These American soldiers had no respect for the Korean women at all. It was because the men of this country had never respected their women. Therefore, they would not respect the Korean women. "Please don't do this." The woman quickly retreated. "I've already explained it to you very sincerely. If you continue like this, I won't be able to continue communicating with you. You're not going to communicate with us." The American soldier stood up and said aggressively, "If you're not going to communicate with us, how are you going to solve this problem? If the matter is not resolved, we will not be willing to do so. I'll treat you to all the coffee today, okay?" The woman was really helpless. The American soldier was still unwilling to give up. "That won't do. You have to give us an explanation. Go inside and give us a good explanation." A few soldiers from the United States Empire spoke as they attacked, forcing the woman to retreat into the workroom inside. Under such circumstances, the employees in the coffee shop did not dare to make a sound. They all stood there and did not know how to help the woman out. Since the men did not step forward, the women naturally did not want to get into trouble. Everyone was stunned. The reason was very simple. The other party was the American soldiers. These soldiers in Korea were all bosses. In the eyes of the Koreans, if it were not for these bosses, Hua Xia and the Russians would have bullied them. Even the third fatty from the Kim family dared to ride on their heads and poop every day. Therefore, the Koreans could not afford to offend these bosses of the American soldiers. Are we just going to watch so many men bully a woman? Ruan Qingxuang could not bear not to care. After all, that was a woman. She was a woman just like them. She could feel how it felt to be in such a situation. Zhuo Meiyan also frowned. At first, she didn't plan to get involved in this matter, but now these soldiers of the American Empire seemed to have gone too far. "Pa!" Zhuo Meiyan slammed the table and stood up. She walked straight to the office inside the coffee shop. Ruan Qingxuang also quickly stood up and followed. With Zhuo Meiyan around, Ruan Qingxuang was not afraid. Although the American soldiers were tall and strong, Zhuo Meiyan was not to be trifled with. After all, she had inherited Su Yun's godfather, Zhang Taisui's martial arts. Naturally, she was not weak. At least, it was easy for her to deal with a few American soldiers. After the American soldiers forced the female boss of the coffee shop into the office, they even threatened the 2 Korean men in the office and made them kneel on the ground with their hands on their heads. The 2 Korean men were making coffee in the office. When they saw the situation, they obediently kneeled on the ground with their hands on their heads. They did not even dare to fart. "I beg you, please don't do anything rash. I can compensate you." "How do you want me to compensate you?" The Korean woman's voice was trembling. She was really afraid that these American soldiers would do something like that to her. This was not the first time the U.S. garrison in Korea had caused trouble. In the past, the U.S. garrison had run over 2 Korean girls and killed them. Moreover, before this incident had even subsided, a new scandal had erupted. It was said that they had sexually harassed Korean women in the subway and even harassed Korean male soldiers. How scary was that? Let's put it this way. The number of murders, harassment, and robberies committed by the American soldiers in Korea would only increase. The American soldiers in Korea could definitely be described as having a lot of misdeeds. In recent years, the American soldiers had committed all kinds of crimes in Korea. From drunk driving to fighting, robbery, rape, murder, and even counterfeiting Korean currency, there were all kinds of crimes. Some people did not believe it. They felt that no matter how weak Korea was, there were still laws. The American soldiers could not be so arrogant. However, the reason why the American soldiers dared to be so arrogant was because the 2 countries had signed an agreement regarding the status of the American soldiers stationed in Korea. The American soldiers stationed in Korea had jurisdiction. That was the reason why they dared to be so presumptuous. Because of this agreement, if the American soldiers in Korea committed a crime while carrying out their duties, then the criminal suspect would be handed over to the American authorities. Only if the American soldiers did not commit a crime while carrying out their duties would Korea have the right to punish them. However, the American soldiers could say that they were carrying out their duties whenever they committed a crime. In any case, they could say whatever they wanted. Therefore, even if the American soldiers committed a heinous crime, Korea could not do anything about it. Moreover, there was a secret clause in the status of the American soldiers stationed in Korea. It guaranteed that the American soldiers would receive treatment that ordinary criminal suspects could not enjoy while they were temporarily detained by Korea. The American soldiers' criminal suspects had to stay in a single room that was no smaller than 22 square meters. Moreover, there had to be a shower and no noise around. The American soldiers' criminal suspects had to eat separately from the Korean prisoners. They were allowed to eat in their own separate rooms. The prison even had to provide them with cards, fitness equipment, and other leisure services to satisfy their other special needs. How was this prison? It was more like a vacation. That was why the soldiers of the United States treated the Koreans so fearlessly. It was even reasonable for them to commit these crimes. The treatment of prisoners was even better than the treatment they received in the garrison. Who cared about their identity? The woman in the cafe was very clear about these things, so she did not doubt that the American soldiers would do inhumane things to her. Even if they could be punished in the future, the punishment they received would be extremely small. On the other hand, she would definitely be trampled on until she could not bear to look at. Thinking of this, the woman broke out in cold sweat. However, in this small workshop, she could not scream for help. She had no ability to resist at all. She was like a fish on a chopping block in front of the soldiers of the United States. Chapter 39:48. That's enough, isn't it? Zhuo appeared behind a few of the American soldiers and spoke with a disdainful and angry expression on her face. The American soldiers were stunned and looked at Zhuo and Ruan Qingshuang, not knowing what to do. These 2 Huaxia girls were really too nosy. The American soldiers were obviously disgusted with them because they didn't dare to act rashly because of Huaxia's strength. That was why they had given Zhuo and Ruan Qingshuang some face. However, Zhuo and Ruan Qingshuang obviously did not intend to accept this. They had already come to the workshop to cause trouble. The 2 of them did not leave the cafe tactfully like other Korean people. Instead, they came to the workshop to meddle in other people's business. A few men actually did such a thing to a defenseless woman. Do you have any shame? Are you soldiers of the American Empire so useless? Zhuo Meiyan didn't give them any face at all. Tell me, what's the difference between you and animals? Let me tell you, this isn't World War II anymore. Modern society is much more civilized. If you do something like this again, you will be exposed very quickly. When that time comes, you will lose the face of the entire American Empire. The American soldiers didn't know how to respond to Zhuo Meiyan's words. Ruan Qingxuang also said righteously, "No matter what, you are soldiers. You represent your country. Your actions are so unsightly. How can your country raise its head? There's no choice. Maybe your country is a country of animals. You do things shamelessly and shamelessly. That's why you don't have any sense of shame," Zhuo Meiyan said viciously. Ruan Qingxuang understood her. Zhuo Meiyan didn't have time to squabble with the American soldiers. She said those words to pull the spearhead of the American soldiers to her. Firstly, it would make Ruan Qingxuang safer. Secondly, it would allow this Korean woman to escape from danger. This matter has nothing to do with you. You better mind your own business. The American soldier said angrily. You are just two Huaxia girls. Do you still want to be a hero who saves the world? Zhuo Meiyan sneered. I'm just a Huaxia woman. What's wrong? Do you dare to touch me? The soldiers of the United States of America were furious. They must have cursed this arrogant woman 1,000,000 times in their hearts. If you dare to touch me, you know very well what the consequences will be. In the end, the unlucky ones will be you. Zhuo Meiyan said, not only can I make you suffer here, I can also let you go to military court when you go back. We Huaxia people will not be like the Koreans and swallow our anger and humiliation. I think you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The American soldiers were finally enraged. Let us teach you a lesson. Then you'll know how stupid your actions today are. After saying that, the soldiers of the United States of America surrounded Zhuo Meiyan. Zhuo Meiyan did not care about them at all. She waved her hand and signaled Ruan Qingxuang to retreat. Ruan Qingxuang's combat strength was not even on the level of Combat Strength 5 trash, so she could be completely ignored. Zhuo Meiyan did not expect her to be of any help. Ruan Qingxuang quickly retreated. She knew her own limits. She would not be a burden to Zhuo Meiyan. When the soldiers of the United States of America saw that one of the two Huaxia women had retreated, they immediately became fearless. They were all ready to teach Zhuo Meiyan, this nosy Huaxia woman, a lesson. At the very least, they would slap her twice and humiliate her. As long as they did not go overboard, it would be fine. The soldiers of the United States of America believed that even if someone intervened in the investigation, the Koreans would not speak up for the Huaxia people. They knew the Koreans too well. Huaxia had helped the Koreans a lot over the years, but the Koreans would never remember the kindness of Huaxia. The Koreans had completely forgotten what had happened in the past. If China had not helped their government in exile back then, how could Korea be where it was now? After Korea was annexed by Japan in 1910, some patriotic independence activists organized anti-Japanese struggles in the northeast of Huaxia. In 1919, after the March 1st movement, a large number of Koreans went into exile in Huaxia. They formed the Korean Independence Army in the northeast of Huaxia and fought in the Chongbai Mountains. At that time, there were 3 temporary governments: the parliamentary government of the Republic of Korea in Vladivostok, the government in Seoul, and the temporary government of the Republic of Korea in Xinjiang. Of course, the real power was still in the hands of the temporary government in Xinjiang. Mr. Sun clearly supported Korea's independence movement and gave diplomatic recognition to the Korean interim government. He also helped the Koreans in many aspects, such as economy and diplomacy. After the Hwangpu Military Academy was established, the 4th batch of Korean students was recruited. In order to avoid the investigation of the Japanese, they had both Huaxia and Korean citizenship and used fake names. When the Northern Expedition Army reached Wuhan, the Central Military and Political School Wuhan branch set up a special class to accept a new batch of Korean students. Back then, there was a Korean Revolutionary Cadre School in Nanjing, Tongshen. Most of the Korean youths trained there became the backbone of the Korean Recovery Army. With the help of China, Korea's government in exile only came out of the underground in 1940 for the first time and openly showed itself to the world. During the Recovery Army's establishment ceremony, Hua Xia gave them a lot of face and hundreds of important people attended. Even Hua Xia's most respected Premier Zhou attended as a representative. How much face did they give to the Koreans? But now, how did the Koreans repay Hua Xia? Let's not talk about how they stole all kinds of material and non-material culture for Hua Xia, snatched all kinds of celebrities, snatched all kinds of benefits. They even colluded with the US Empire, which had been suppressing Hua Xia. What kind of mentality was this? Using the word shameless to describe them would be a waste of the idiom shameless. The Americans knew the Koreans too well. They knew that they would never be grateful to Hua Xia. Therefore, even if Hua Xia saved them today, they would not be grateful to Hua Xia. When the time comes, they would still speak up for the Americans. It was just like when the American soldiers were so unbridled in Korea at the end of World War II, the Koreans still nodded and bowed when they saw them. That was because although the Koreans looked strong and stubborn on the surface, they were actually very despicable. President Lotte committed suicide, Samsung's mobile phone exploded, Hanjin's shipping company suffered losses, and Hyundai and Kia could only fight against each other. All along, the Chinese had contributed a lot to the Korean economy, and the Koreans knew about it. Not to mention that they were grateful, the Chinese did not even say a word of thanks. Instead, they felt that they deserved it and even stabbed them in the back. Now, Hua Xia had started to boycott the Koreans, but the Koreans would never find the reason because they always had a sense of superiority in front of Hua Xia. They would not bow down to the Hua Xia, and would hate the Hua Xia even more. The American soldiers were sure of this mentality of the Koreans, so they rushed towards Zhuo Meiyan without any hesitation. There were no cameras in the workshop anyway, so there would not be any evidence left. Zhuo Meiyan was not someone to be trifled with. When the first American soldier rushed toward her, Zhuo Meiyan kicked him in the face. Even though the American soldier was tall and strong, he was still kicked into the ground by Zhuo Meiyan. His entire face was caved in, his nose was broken, his front teeth fell out, and his upper lip was cut open by his teeth, with blood gushing out. The other American soldiers were instantly stunned. They never thought that a Hua Xia woman would have such a terrifying attack power that she could inflict such heavy injuries on them. Zhuo Meiyan did not plan to sit still and wait for her death. The American soldiers knew that there were no cameras, and she also knew that there were no cameras, so she took the initiative to attack. With a punch, she crippled another American soldier on the left. Although it was a soft punch, the strength was not weaker than a boxer's heavy artillery. This punch landed on the American soldier's eye socket, and his eyebrow was directly broken. Blood flowed out non-stop, and his entire vision was filled with a bloody mist. The American soldiers who had lost 2 of their men in an instant were even more furious. The Americans who loved to fight would not admit defeat so easily. The remaining 3 soldiers immediately surrounded Zhang Yang and attacked him ferociously. Chapter 39-49. Zhuo Meiyan did not panic in the face of danger. With a single move, she knocked the remaining 3 soldiers to the ground. After getting up, she kicked one of them in the face, followed by another in the crotch. The last American soldier reacted quickly. He stood up and wanted to fight back. However, Ruan Qingshuang, who was behind him, somehow mustered up her courage. She picked up a wooden stick of unknown use and hit the back of the man's head hard. After all, Ruan Qingshuang was a weak woman who did not even have the strength to truss a chicken. Although she had used up all her strength, she still could not defeat the last American soldier. The angry American soldier realized that he was no match for Zhuo Meiyan. He decided to vent all his anger on Ruan Qingshuang. He turned around and raised his huge palm to slap Ruan Qingshuang. This slap had used up all of his strength. If Ruan Qingshuang's small body was hit, she would at least have a severe concussion. She might even be severely injured by the huge impact. It was even possible for her to die. Ruan Qingxuang did not have any combat experience at all. She did not even know how to dodge the incoming slap. She just stood there stupidly. Seeing that the slap was about to hit her, Zhuo Meiyan flashed in front of Ruan Qingxuang and used her arm to block the powerful slap. Just as the American soldier was wondering how this woman suddenly appeared in front of him, Zhuo Meiyan kicked him in the groin and forced him to kneel down. As the American soldier knelt down, Zhuo Meiyan raised her knee and slammed it into his chin. This time, the American soldier was almost killed. His head was bent back more than 100 degrees. The back of his head fell to the ground and he fainted instantly. The 5 American soldiers were taken care of by Zhuo Meiyan in less than a minute. The Korean woman was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. The other 2 Korean men were also horrified. They didn't know how to describe their shocked expressions. Ruan Qingxuang saw that the 5 American soldiers were taken care of and sighed in relief. She quickly went to stand behind Zhuo Meiyan. The 3 American soldiers who were still able to stand up did not dare to act rashly. The 5 of them were no match for him before, let alone the 3 of them who were left with the remnants of the defeated army. If they continued to fight, they would only be humiliating themselves. It was meaningless. Do you want to continue or get lost? Zhuo Meiyan asked in a provocative tone. If you want to continue, I'll make you suffer the same fate as those 2. At least half a year, you won't be able to take care of yourself. It's unknown if you can continue your family line in the future. The 3 American soldiers panted heavily but did not dare to talk back. If you want to get lost, then hurry up and take those 2 with you. No one will believe that a weak woman like me can defeat 5 men. Besides, do you want others to believe that you're useless? Zhuo Meiyan said. Do you think the Koreans will still believe that you can protect them if they know that 5 American soldiers can't even defeat a weak woman like me from Huaxia? Will they still let you enjoy the service of Korean women in their country? Hee hee. I think your superiors will find you embarrassing and throw you to the military court, right? The 3 American soldiers were completely speechless. At a time like this, they had to endure even if they were beaten. He had to suffer in silence, unable to voice out his bitterness. This was truly vexing. Zhuo Meiyan did not want to waste any more time. She waved her fist and threw a simple sentence at them. Get lost. The 3 American soldiers had no choice but to help the 2 completely crippled fellows up. Their faces were covered in dirt as they scurried away with their tails between their legs. They had lost all face. When Ruan Qingxuang saw that the American soldiers had left completely, the stone in her heart was finally lifted. Let's go out too. Zhuo Meiyan did not say anything. She directly led Ruan Qingxuang out of the workshop. She had no intention of talking to the Koreans. After the 2 of them came out, there were no other customers in the lobby of the cafe except for 1 male and 2 female waiters who were frightened. Zhuo Meiyan and Ruan Qingxuang's coffee was a little cold. The Korean woman immediately chased after them. Give me 2 more cups of coffee. Zhuo Meiyan sat down and ignored the Korean woman. She directly said to the waiter, Take away these 2 cups. I don't like to drink warm coffee in this weather. It's more comfortable when it's hot. The Korean woman immediately ordered the waiter. Give me 2 cups of the shop's best musk coffee. After that, the Korean woman walked in front of Zhuo Meiyan and Ruan Qingxuang and bowed deeply. Then she said to the 2 of them, Thank you very much for your help today. I don't know how to repay you. Treating you 2 to a cup of coffee is just a small token of my appreciation. I hope you 2 can accept it. You're welcome. Zhuo Meiyan waved her hand. She did not want to chat with the Korean woman too much. They were going to cause trouble for this cafe later. If they became friends now, she would be too embarrassed to fight. No, this is a great favor to me, the Korean woman said. I, Jin Xiu, swear that from now on, all Huaxia customers who come to my cafe will be free of charge. I will use my actions to thank Huaxia people for the rest of my life. Zhuo Meiyan felt a lot better after hearing her say that. Ruan Qingxuang also felt that what they did today was not in vain. You don't have to feel guilty. It's just a small matter. Ruan Qingshuang said lightly. You're welcome. No, I'm really grateful. The Korean woman's face was full of gratitude. She was indeed very sincere. When the musk coffee arrived, the Korean woman personally served it to the two of them. Please enjoy. At this moment, the Korean woman's phone rang. She stepped back a meter away from Zhua Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang and picked up the phone. La Xian, what's wrong? Did something happen to your mother? I just received a call from Brother Han. He said that something happened in the cafe. The person who called was Jean La Xian. The person Su Yun asked Zhua Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang to help him find. Zhua Meiyan's eyes lit up when she heard the woman call out La Xian's name. It seemed that they had found the right place and had not wasted any time. Brother Han was one of the two cowards who made coffee in the cafe. After the American soldiers left, he called Jean La Xian to inform him. It's been solved. La Xian, don't worry. Jean Xiu said, it's the two Hua Xia ladies who helped me. I'm fine now. Just take care of my mother. How can you be fine? The American imperial weapon is nothing. Jean La Xian was worried. He did not believe that two Hua Xia ladies could do anything. I'm already in a taxi. Wait for me. I'll be there soon. Jean Xiu was stunned. No, it's been solved. If you come, who will take care of my mother? Don't worry. I've already told the nurse. Don't worry. Jean La Xian hung up the phone. Jean Xiu shook her head helplessly. She wanted to call back and tell Jean La Xian not to come. There was nothing else to do here. He just needed to take care of her mother in the hospital. A call from your family? Zhua Meiyan took the initiative to talk to Jean Xiu. Something happened in the cafe. Your family must be worried. They must come to see you. It's wrong of you not to let them come. Jean Xiu stopped calling and glanced at Zhua Meiyan. It's my younger brother. He's my twin brother. Then all the more reason to come. Something almost happened to my sister. As her younger brother, if I don't come and take a look, then I'm really not a good person, right? Zhua Meiyan said. Jean Xiu felt that Zhua Meiyan's words made sense. Since Zhua Meiyan had saved her life, she was not wary of her. But he's taking care of my mother in the hospital. Your mother is sick? Then he's really a filial son. Zhua Meiyan continued. He must have delayed his work because of this. Jean Xiu nodded. Yes. He works abroad all year round. Because of this, he had to put down his work and come back to take care of my mother. Hearing that, Zhua Meiyan was sure that La Xian was Jean La Xian, the man Su Yun was looking for. Chapter 3950. His mother was seriously ill, and he didn't come home. He's no different from an animal, Zhua Meiyan said. He should come back. Jean Xiu nodded. But he's very busy abroad. My mother felt guilty when she heard that he came back because of her. It's a habit for parents to do things for their sons. After all, they do it from the moment they're born. Ruan Qingshuang said, if you don't do that, the world will despise you for being unworthy of being a parent. This kind of thing, whether it's an individual or the outside world, will put a lot of pressure on you. Jean Xiu didn't know what to say. In fact, she didn't think that her younger brother was a filial son, but La Xian had indeed helped their family a lot in some things. Out of a good impression of Ruan Qingshuang and Zhua Meiyan, Jean Xiu told him some things about her family. Their father died early, so their mother raised Jean Xiu and Jean La Xian alone. It wasn't easy. Jean La Xian had been interested in computers since he was a child, but his family was poor. His mother didn't have money for him to study, so he bought a computer with the money he earned from cheating. Because of that, his mother beat him and smashed the computer. After that, Jean La Xian ran away from home. They hadn't heard from him for several years. Both his mother and his daughter thought that he was dead. However, Jean La Xian came back later and left a sum of money for his mother and sister. He told them that he was going abroad and might not come back in the future. After that, Jean La Xian left Korea. Jean Xiao kept persuading her mother to pretend that she never had a son. Otherwise, she would only be sad. After that, Jean Lexian didn't hear from her again. He didn't come back until several years ago. He said that he heard that the slum area where they had been living was renovated, so he bought it with money and renovated it into the most luxurious cafe in this area. Jean Lexian believed that his mother and sister wouldn't have to worry about money anymore with this cafe. Indeed, Jean Xiao and her mother lived a much better life with this cafe. Therefore, Jean Xiao forgave Jean Lexian for what he had done before. Even though Jean Lexian said that he was very busy and couldn't go home often, Jean Xiao understood. However, her mother was sick a month ago, and kept asking to see Jean Lexian. Jean Xiao had no choice but to inform Jean Lexian that her mother was seriously ill and wanted to see him, because she didn't know whether she would be able to see him again after this meeting. Hearing this, Jean Lexian rushed home immediately. He didn't have any other thoughts. He just wanted to spend a few more days with the old man. After that, he still had to do his work. Many things in life were forced by circumstances. Most of the time, it wasn't that people didn't want to do something. It was just that there were many things that they wanted to do but couldn't do it. They couldn't make it their focus. Jean Xiao's mother was satisfied that Jean Lexian could come back this time. Jean Xiao thought it was enough. At least they could be sure that there was a family member who cared about them from afar. While Jean Xiao was telling the story to Zhuo Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang, Jean Lexian came back. Jean Lexian rushed back to the store with an anxious look on his face. Jean Xiao went up to him and comforted him. "It's fine now. Why did you come back? Everything has been taken care of." "Did Brother Han take care of it?" Jean Lexian said. The people who worked for Jean Xiao in the cafe were all acquaintances of Jean Lexian when he was young. They were all children from the slums, so they didn't have many connections and didn't have a way out. That was why Jean Lexian asked Brother Han to work in the cafe. He remembered that Brother Han was a very loyal friend when he was young. He would always stand up for Brother Han when he was in trouble. With Brother Han around, Jean Lexian felt more at ease. At least, Brother Han would be able to fend off those troublemakers outside. Jean Xiao didn't know how to answer. She looked a little embarrassed. Brother Han looked like a coward in front of the American soldiers. You expect Korean men to deal with the American soldiers? Are you kidding me? Zhuo Meiyan said with disdain. I don't know who your Brother Han is, but the three men in the cafe are all cowards. They don't even dare to fart in front of the American soldiers. Jean Lexian couldn't help but clench his fists when he heard that. Brother Han wasn't that kind of person. He was very particular about the code of brotherhood. No matter what happened when he was young, he would always rush to the front when there was a fight. Yes, that was true when he was young. Because children were very innocent, they didn't understand the messy things in society. Children dared to solve problems with their fists because they didn't know how to cause any big problems. However, things were different when they grew up. The children in the slums felt inferior as they grew up. It was an undeniable fact. Most of the time, people started to lose their courage as they grew older. They lost their courage because they had more responsibilities on their shoulders. They needed to think more before they did things. They understood that they weren't strong enough to cause trouble. They also understood that those who were really rich and powerful could easily kill them. It was a kind of growth. Growing up meant losing a lot of things, including integrity. Don't be angry. What happened today isn't something that we can deal with. Those people. Jean Xiao wanted to comfort Jean Lexian. However, Jean Lexian walked straight to the inner workroom and yelled at the people inside, "Brother Han, what are you doing? Come out." Then, there was the sound of things being knocked over in the workshop. Jean Lexian walked in and waved his fist at Brother Han. His fist hit Brother Han's face hard. Brother Han staggered and fell to the ground. He couldn't get up. "What did you promise me? Don't you remember?" Jean Lexian said angrily. "I asked you to come here to protect my sister. You can't just stand by and watch her get bullied without doing anything. You bastard, are you still a man? Stand up right now." Bastard. Brother Han stood up, but didn't say anything. He just lowered his head and let Jean Lechien beat him. Say something. Tell me, are you still a man? What do you want to do? Jean Lechien punched Brother Han in the face again. Brother Han still didn't resist. He just let Jean Lechien vent his anger. Jin Xiu walked forward and stopped Jean Lechien. You don't have to do this. You can't blame Brother Han for this. You can only blame our country for being useless. The American troops were left behind by our country. Even so, we can't let them bully us like this. Brother Han, you are a man. Why didn't you fight back? Jean Lechien couldn't understand. Lechien, it's not that I didn't fight back, but I know. It's meaningless to fight back, Brother Han finally said. Jean Lechien was stunned. What does he mean? Is he going to let the American troops bully us like this? Don't tell me you haven't heard of the acquittal of the 2 American soldiers who killed our Korean girl more than 10 years ago? Brother Han said. It's no secret that the American soldiers are barbaric and unfair. How do you expect me to fight against them? Brother Han's words made everyone fall silent. More than 10 years ago, a Caterpillar tank of the American Empire's 2nd Division engineer team stationed in Korea ran over 2 teenage Korean girls. Due to the narrow roads, the tank drove to the right side of the road without careful observation. It ran over 2 junior high school girls who were walking on the side of the road. However, according to the garrison status agreement signed between the 2 countries, the garrison command of the American Empire had the right to exercise jurisdiction over their military personnel. The Korean judicial system had no right to try the 2 American soldiers who caused the accident. This kind of law was not strict enough to restrict the American soldiers, so they could easily get away with it. Back then, the Koreans even had a large-scale protest because of this incident. One had to know that the American soldiers caused more than 400 traffic accidents in Korea every year. Even though the Koreans had made a lot of noise in the past and hated the American soldiers, they seemed to have forgotten the pain after the scars had healed. They even wanted the American Empire to deploy SAR. What an extremely retarded people. Chapter 3951. Brother Han is right. The American soldiers have a very high status in Korea. We need them to deploy SAR, so the status of the American soldiers has increased a lot. We can't afford to offend them, Jin Xiu said. Even if Brother Han did something today, the result would only be worse. Worse? Jean Lechien looked confused. Are you going to let him watch you get humiliated by the soldiers of the American Empire? Isn't that bad? Of course it's bad. Jin Xiu said. The American soldiers will not only continue to humiliate me, but they will also humiliate them. It's meaningless. That won't do. Jean Lechien said angrily. I can't tolerate a friend that I've always respected doing nothing when my sister was hurt. But it's all over now, isn't it? I'm fine now, and I'm fine. Jin Xiu said. If you have time to throw a tantrum here, why don't you go and thank the 2 ladies outside who helped me? Jean Lechien was so angry that he couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly realized that there was such a thing, so he stopped pursuing Brother Han's matter and walked out of the workshop. Zhua Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang had already tasted their coffee and were ready to get down to business. Thank you for saving my sister. Please tell us what you want in return. Jean Lechien walked out and bowed to Zhua Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang. Although we can't repay you with anything, we'll try our best as long as we can, Jin Xiu said. Zhua Meiyan smiled. No, my request is very simple. I'm sure your brother can do it. After saying that, she looked at Jean Lechien. Jean Lechien also looked at her blankly. He didn't understand what she meant. Our request is very simple, Ruan Qingshuang said to Jin Xiu. We're here to ask your brother for a favor. Jean Lechien was even more confused now. No one in Korea knew him. Are you sure you want my help? Your name is Jean Lechien, right? Ruan Qingshuang said, so of course we're here for you. I'm sorry. There are many people with the same name in Korea. I think you've got the wrong person. I don't live in Korea all the time. Jean Lechien shook his head. It's precisely because you don't live in Korea all year round that we're looking for you. We wouldn't even look for someone who lives in Korea all year round. Zhua Meiyan said, although your name is Jean Lexian, your legal identity in the United States is Han Jean. Are we mistaken? I'm looking for you. Jean Lexian was stunned. How? How do you know all this? Who are you people? At this moment, Jean Lexian was a little nervous. Don't worry, we're not here to cause trouble for you, Zhua Meiyan said, but if you don't cooperate with us, then we have no choice but to use some unconventional methods. It's just a small matter. I'm sure you'll be willing to help us, Ruan Qingxuang said. She believed that Jean Lexian would help them because of his sister. Jean Xiu asked cautiously, did you come prepared this time? Of course. Otherwise, why would we come here for coffee in the middle of the night? Zhua Meiyan said, of course we have something to do. Otherwise, we would have left when those stupid soldiers from the United States came looking for trouble. Are we so willing to meddle in other people's business? Jean Lexian couldn't help but frown. You don't really want to help my sister? I'm begging you to use your brain. Korea has colluded with the US Empire and done so many things to harm China. Why should I stay in Korea and help you solve the problem of the US Empire's soldiers? Am I crazy? It's your own fault. It has nothing to do with us. Zhua Meiyan was always so straightforward. Jean Lexian was speechless. Jean Xiu also lowered her head awkwardly. This was a matter of the country. They couldn't change or solve it. I know you'll definitely say that it has nothing to do with you, Zhua Meiyan said, but you're a citizen of this country. You have to take responsibility. Okay. I owe you for what you did today. Just tell me what you want me to do, Jean Lexian said. He didn't want to get too involved with Hua Xia. I helped you do what you wanted me to do. We're even now. I don't owe you anything. We don't care if you owe us or not. You have to do what you did today. Zhua Meiyan said, your boss is called Baldwin, right? Jean Lexian suddenly became nervous. What do you want? It's about my boss. I won't do it easily. Who are you? Cut the crap. Zhua Meiyan said, I've said it before. You have to do what you did today. Jean Lexian finally understood that they didn't come with good intentions. Well, we need you to tell us how to open Baldwin's computer. Ruan Qingxuang said, we don't have any other requests. It's a simple thing. We just need you to do it. Jean Lexian shook his head. That's impossible. You can ask me to do anything for you, but it's impossible for me to betray my boss. Please, can you think about it? Your boss's computer is in our hands. Can your boss still be free and unfettered outside? He's also under our control. Zhua Meiyan smiled bitterly. If you don't crack the computer, your boss's life will be in danger. Jean Lexian was stunned. He didn't believe it. No one would believe it. No one in the American continent could touch his boss, Mr. Baldwin. I don't know what you're talking about. If you don't need me to do anything else, please leave. I'm very grateful for what you did today, but I can't do what you asked me to do. Jean Lexian wanted to see them out. Jean Xiu had seen Zhua Meiyan's fighting skills. She knew that if Zhua Meiyan attacked, no one would be able to stop her. After all, even 5 American soldiers were no match for her. I'm sorry. My brother is too stubborn. Please don't take it to heart. Jean Xiu apologized. That's enough. Zhua Meiyan waved her hand. If you don't agree, we won't be so polite anymore. No, don't. I'll help you persuade him. I believe he'll be willing to help you. Jean Xiu said quickly. Jean Lexian looked at Jean Xiu and said helplessly, Sister, what are you doing? What can you persuade me about? You don't know what's going on. I can't help them. They want me to betray my boss in the United States. Jean Xiu looked at Jean Lexian and said, Your boss in the United States? Didn't you see how the Americans treated me today? Jean Lexian was stunned. But if I betray my boss, the consequences will be unimaginable. I won't be able to stay in the United States anymore. He'll kill me. Jean Lexian shook his head. Then don't go back. You're so good at computer science. You can get a good job in Korea. We still have this cafe. We'll live a happy life. Mom won't have to worry about you anymore. Jean Xiu said. Jean Lexian shook his head resolutely. Why are you so stubborn? Do you really have to do things for the Americans? Jean Xiu's face was filled with displeasure. It's not as simple as you think. It's not something that can be solved with just a few words. Jean Lexian said anxiously, Our boss is not a simple person. I won't betray him. I can't betray him. Zhua Meiyan said, I think you won't give up until you see the end. You don't believe that your boss is under our control, do you? Of course I don't believe it. If you knew who my boss is, you wouldn't say that. Jean Lexian said. You're too arrogant. If you knew who we are, you wouldn't say that either. Zhua Meiyan said disdainfully, Do you think your boss is the only one in the world who's the most arrogant? There's always someone better than you. Haven't you heard of this saying? Chapter 3952. Ruan Qingshuang was a soft-hearted person. When she saw Jean Xiu begging, she couldn't bear it. However, Zhua Meiyan was not so indecisive. She turned around and said, Why should we waste our breath on an ungrateful person like him? Please, Kim Su said pitifully. We've already done our best to help you just now. I don't care to talk about what you Koreans have done to Huaxia, Zhua Meiyan said. You're earning Huaxia's money and doing things that harm Huaxia's interests. Kim Su lowered her head. I know what you're talking about. However, the agreement between the THAAD system and the government was made by those idiots at Lotte Group. They exchanged their golf course in Xingzhou County for a piece of state-owned land in Namiangju, Gyeonggi Province, near Seoul for the THAAD camp. It was their ignorance. However, all of you Koreans know that THAAD will greatly change the geopolitical situation in the peninsula, and Huaxia's strategic security interests will be greatly damaged. Zhua Meiyan said, While Lotte Group is earning benefits from Huaxia's consumers, they are actively harming the security interests of Huaxia's people. A country's security should not be built on the basis of harming the security of other countries, right? Ruan Qingshuang was also very angry about this. When she heard Zhua Meiyan mention this matter, her kindness from earlier disappeared. Lotte Group has more than 100 supermarkets and 5 department stores in Huaxia. 70% of the sales of Lotte Group's duty-free stores in Seoul come from Huaxia's tourists. All the official holidays in Huaxia, even the current Double 11 and Double 12, are carnivals to Korea's retail and distribution industries. Why don't you care about the contributions of Huaxia's people to you? On the surface, Lotte Group's dependence on the Huaxia market is not high. However, if you include the actual spending of Huaxia's tourists, Lotte Group's dependence on Huaxia is actually very high. Zhua Meiyan said, In order to earn the money of Huaxia's tourists, Lotte Department Store has also put in a lot of effort. You Koreans know this very well. Jean Xiu lowered her head. Before Jean Lexian took out the money to open this cafe, Jean Xiu worked in the Mingdong branch of Lotte Department Store. She knew very well that 95% of the registered VIP members in the Mingdong branch were Huaxia people. Of course, in other branches, Huaxia accounted for most of the VIP customers. When Jean Xiu worked in the Mingdong shop, she would consider the needs of Huaxia consumers when making plans and activities. Out of the 6,000 employees at Lotte Shopping Mall, 1,000 of them were specially recruited Huaxia employees. And among the local employees, 1/3 of them had studied abroad in China before. 2 years ago, Lu Tian had even specially set up an Alipay account for Huaxia tourists. It was equipped with sufficient Chinese-speaking staff. There were Chinese-speaking staff at the counters of various brands, information centers, and tax refund offices. This was to make it easier for Huaxia tourists to shop and handle tax refunds. Jean Xiu was very clear about this, but of course, she couldn't say anything. In recent years, how much convenience has Huaxia provided to Lotte Shopping Mall's development in Huaxia? Other than Yanjing, Shenzhen, and other first-tier cities, Chengdu, Ludong, and other regions with high spending power have also provided you with convenient facilities. These regions have better technological conditions and high spending power. They have the potential to expand your business. Zhua Meiyan said, and this is how Latte Shopping Mall repaid our kindness. Jin Xiu lowered her head and didn't say anything. Jin Laxian said, you Huaxia people are willing to spend money in our Latte group. That's what you want to do. We didn't force you to do it. It's the ability of us Koreans. We have the ability to earn money from you Huaxia people. Zhua Meiyan was annoyed by his tone. Latte Shopping Mall is a Korean company. What's wrong with insisting on cooperating with the Korean authorities on issues related to national security? Jin Laxian said, the ownership of the Xingzhou County Golf Course belongs to Latte Group. It has the right to decide the use of its land. Since when is it your Huaxia people's turn to speak? Ruan Qingshuang could not help but tremble when she heard that. Is that what you Koreans think? No, he's too agitated. He's not like that. Jin Xiu panicked and quickly explained. You don't have to speak for him. We know very well what kind of person he is. Zhua Meiyan said, we are the people who saved his sister from being humiliated by the American soldiers. If he can treat us like this, how can he be grateful? Definitely not. Jin Xiu shook her head. No, it's not like that. We're not blind. Ruan Qingshuang said, if you Koreans don't know how to be grateful for something like this, then you won't be grateful when we, the consumers, bring benefits to Korea's economy. Jin Laxian was not sincere about being grateful. After he came to the shop and beat up Brother Han, he had considered Brother Han's position. He was also worried about whether the American soldiers would take revenge. So what if I'm not grateful? If it was our own people who took care of this, we would have asked the American soldiers to leave instead of using our fists like you did. You thought you helped us, but you left us with a hidden threat. Jin Laxian said, if they come for revenge, it will be because of you. Zhua Meiyan wasn't surprised at all by Jin Laxian's act of returning the favor with a grievance. That's the nature of you Koreans. Zhua Meiyan smiled. Especially when it comes to Korean men. Ungrateful and ungrateful. That's something that's ingrained in the bones of Korean men. Jin Laxian glared at Zhua Meiyan. If it were not for Zhua Meiyan's strength, he would have hit her. You Huaxia women don't have the right to judge us Korean men. Jin Laxian said angrily. Yeah, you Korean women should be the ones to judge us. Ruan Qingshuang was not as open-minded as Zhua Meiyan. She was really angry. Look at the status of you Korean women in the family and society. You're just a vassal to Korean men. You have no status, no dignity. Jin Xiu felt a lump in her throat. To be honest, although the status of Korean women was much higher than before, and their participation in education and a few other aspects was much better, most of the time, the status of Korean women was still very low. In fact, Confucius was to blame for this. Korea was deeply influenced by Confucianism. It used to be the strictest patriarchal country in Asia. Men were superior to women in every aspect of social and economic life. Although the color of traditional society was fading rapidly in the process of modernization, Korea was still one of the countries in Asia where men were superior to women. Korea's real life was not like the Korean dramas they sold to Huaxia to make money. Most Korean men in real life were impulsive and rude, just like Jin Laxian's current state. Korean men were the most famous in the world for hitting women. In Korea, beautiful women had a good life, but most of the beautiful women would become the playthings of the rich men in Korea. Women who were not beautiful in Korea were like handicapped people. They were discriminated against by the rich men in Korea. It could really affect their jobs and marriages. They might even be looked down upon by the whole society. Korea was a country where people who were not beautiful would be looked down upon. If they were not beautiful, they would not be treated equally. After World War II, Korean men were willing to sacrifice their women to serve the Americans in order to recover the country's economy. They relied on women to recover the country's economy. I'm afraid you can't find another man as shameless as them in the world. Ruan Qingxuang was really angry. Now that Korea's economy has recovered a little, it's all thanks to women. But in the eyes of Korean men, women have no status at all. There was a Korean writer whose ancestors were Korean. He was born in Hwaseong and had lived in Japan for a long time. He had published a book called The Ugly Koreans. He wrote about the arrogance and strife of Koreans. Korean plastic surgery was developed because not being beautiful was equivalent to being disabled. Furthermore, it was written that even if they did not have the money to buy large widescreen televisions and encyclopedias, Koreans would still put up models that could pass off as real ones in their homes. It was also written that a Korean man holding a bottle of wine and knocking on his friend's door at midnight without any scruples, forcing his friend to drink with him. Not only was it not a rude action, but it also showed his deep friendship with the person who was called. In any case, the sharp strokes of the pen describe the real Koreans. If you really want to know more about Koreans, then read some books. Don't be brainwashed by those brainless TV dramas and think that the men and women of Korea are so romantic. Those silly girls who want to live in Korea should wake up quickly. Chapter 3953. You're a woman. A Hwaseong woman. What right do you have to tell us what to do? Although Jean Lachien had lived in the United States for many years, his pride as a Korean man was still ingrained in his bones. When Ruan Qingxuang saw his face, she did not want to bother with him anymore. It was disgusting. Jean Xiu looked at her younger brother coldly. Because their family was poor, Jean Lachien had left the family very early. Other than her, there was only her mother in the family. It was not easy for Jean Xiu to survive for so many years. She was lucky that she was pretty and didn't need plastic surgery. Because of her face, she could find a job as a salesperson in a department store. However, because of her family background, she was looked down upon by many people. She was bullied by her colleagues and teased by men. However, she endured all of this because she wanted to protect this family for her mother and brother. If she couldn't hold on, this family might be gone. Today, her younger brother really disappointed her, very much. Her mother used to tell Jean Xiu a lot of ugly things about her country, but Jean Xiu refused to believe it. Now, she despised her country more and more. Kim Su's father died an unnatural death when she and her brother were very young. Her mother said that they used to live in Seoul, which was now Seoul. That year, Seoul hosted the Olympic Games that every country in the world wanted to host. Because the Olympic Games were like a car's turbocharger, it would bring about a huge economic boost. It was the most significant thing in Korea during those years. After all, even the superpower next to them, Hwaseong, was not qualified to hold the Olympic Games. Hwaseong's Olympic Games were held 20 years after theirs. Of course, the Koreans were very proud. But many people didn't know that behind the pride of the Olympic Games in Seoul, thousands of people were enslaved and tortured, just for the sake of their country's reputation. At that time, her mother believed that people in her country would do anything for the sake of their reputation. She hated those hypocritical people in her country very much. Those self-righteous people who thought that they could do whatever they wanted as long as they didn't lose face were the people her mother hated. Jean Xiu knew a lot of things from his mother. That year, his mother moved out of Seoul and came to Busan. That year, his father died an unnatural death in Seoul. Speaking of this, his mother kept shaking her head and crying. In the eyes of many Koreans, the Olympics was an important turning point for Korea to walk towards modern civilization. When talking about the Olympics, many Koreans were still intoxicated. Indeed, that world-class competition was a turning point that could not be ignored for Korea. But for some of the Korean people, this was also their nightmare. On the eve of the Seoul Olympics, in order to let the world see a more modern country, tens of thousands of Koreans were forcibly arrested. Some of them were arrested because they were poor, ugly, and rustic, so they did not look like good people. They did not look like people from a developed country. If foreigners saw them, they would be laughed at. Jean Xiu's mother said that they had gone through a hellish nightmare. Both of Jean Xiu's parents had been captured. She was lucky enough to escape with Jean Xiu and Jean Lachien to Busan, but her father had died. Jin Xiu's parents and some innocent people were imprisoned in dozens of secret prisons, where endless hard labor, humiliation, torture, and death awaited them. But Korea had been trying to cover up what had happened in those years. Many people who had experienced what had happened in those years were desperate. They desperately wanted to tell their stories. Later, a victim stood quietly in front of the parliament building for a month with a sign asking for justice, but there was no response. Most of these victims were now homeless. They lived in shelters or mental hospitals. Many people suffered from anger, depression, and poverty. But no one admitted the fact that the officials at that time had encouraged the police to kidnap and imprison those innocent people for the sake of the country's reputation. Jin Xiu's mother intermittently told the story of that year. That year, his parents were standing on the street wrapped in loose black rags. They did not dare to look up, and their eyes were fixed on their rubber shoes. A policeman stood in front of them and accused them of stealing bread from a shop. Their hearts were beating wildly in fear, but they had never stolen anything before. Then, the policeman took out a lighter and was about to burn their faces. They had no choice but to nod repeatedly and admit that they had stolen something. But this time, the confession brought them endless pain and torture. They were arrested and thrown into a prison. That night, they realized how terrible their following days would be. A guard broke into Jin Xiu's mother's dormitory that night and humiliated her. It was the same the next day and the third day. Every day, she would be humiliated by the same person or by different people. The slightest disobedience would be beaten, and every day during the day, she would have to do hard labor. She wondered what she had done in her previous life that God had sent her to this kind of hell on earth. But then, something even more terrifying happened. Jin Xiu's mother saw with her own eyes that a guard dragged Jin Xiu's father by his hair to an open space and beat him with a stick. Blood gushed out from his head. The guards immediately covered him with a blanket. Some of them stomped on his head with their feet, while others hit other parts of his body with their fists. Jin Xiu's mother saw dark red blood seeping out, and the blue blanket was quickly dyed red. After a series of punches and kicks, the blanket slowly slid down. Jin Xiu's father's eyes rolled back, and he stopped struggling forever. Jin Xiu's mother later said that this was the first time she had witnessed death, but she did not expect that the person who died was her own man. Although it was painful for Jin Xiu to hear about these things, her mother would talk about it from time to time. Perhaps it was because of the psychological trauma. Jin Xiu's mother also said that on the night of her father's death, a guard came to humiliate her. No matter how painful it was, she did not dare to make a sound. There were thousands of prisoners in the place they were sent to. A huge reinforced concrete structure forcibly separated them from the outside world. This place was called the House of Brothers. The people here faced guards with sticks and hunting dogs day and night. The story behind this wall was inevitably related to the modern history of Korea. All the innocent people who were called criminals were arrested during Seoul's bid for and preparation for the Olympic Games. It was all because the government wanted to give the world a modern, clean, advanced, and westernized Seoul. This kind of behavior was called the purification of the city's wanderers by the government at that time. The police arrested tens of thousands of people with the help of the so-called House of Brothers and other organizations. These people not only included real wanderers, beggars, thieves, but also poor street vendors, disabled people who had difficulty living, homeless children who were separated from their parents, and some university students who held anti-government leaflets. 90% of the people who were arrested were innocent. Jin Xiu's parents were just street vendors who lived in poverty. The people who were involved in the case later said that they would die on the street anyway. Therefore, Jin Xiu's mother had always been very resistant to the so-called upper class of Korea. She said that she felt disgusted when she saw government officials and wanted to vomit. The funny thing was that the theme song of Seoul at that time went like this: "Let's hold hands and raise them to the sky. The calm of the morning brings us the dawn of peace." Jin Xiu's mother said many times that the dark place at that time was ruled by violence. When people were locked in a place where people were beaten to death every day, they could not complain about hard labor, abuse, or humiliation. At that time, there were people who tried to escape. However, once the people who tried to escape were caught, they would be subjected to the most brutal beatings. The bloody scene made her not dare to try. But at that time, Jin Xiu and Jin Lexian were still very young. They were scared after not seeing their parents for a few days. As a mother, if she could not escape, her children would starve to death. She suddenly realized that she could not do that. Whether she escaped or not, she would die. However, if she succeeded, she could feed her children. Chapter 39:54. At that time, once the gate was locked after 6 o'clock, the guards would be released like hungry wolves. All the women and children would be subjected to the violence and humiliation of those hungry wolves. During the day, everyone had to do hard labor, so the guards wouldn't touch them. At that time, Jin Xiu's mother was assigned to a hard labor position in the iron industry. She secretly brought back a broken saw. After being humiliated every night, she and the other girls in the dormitory carefully sawed open the iron window on the second floor of the dormitory. They didn't sleep at all and took turns sawing. It took them a few days to squeeze through the cracks of the iron window and climb over the wall that was full of glass shards. Finally, they escaped to the mountain. When Jin Xiu's mother appeared in front of their house with wounds all over her body, Jin Xiu and Jin Lexian were scared out of their wits. At that time, the two children were only 7 or 8 years old. They hadn't seen their parents for more than 10 days. They had been relying on the little food that could fill their stomachs at home. For 3 days, they had only been drinking cold water to fill their stomachs. When they finally saw their mother, the two children were so scared that they didn't know they were hungry anymore. At that time, the people in power in Korea said that it was a welfare organization. However, it was actually a concentration camp. All of this was made public by a newly appointed prosecutor. When he was hunting, he heard from his guide that there were guards with sticks and ferocious hunting dogs guarding some prisoners on a nearby mountain. Then, he carried out a surprise inspection, and the drunken guards were soon dumbfounded. Behind the thick and high walls, the victims were locked in a crowded dormitory. When unexpected visitors appeared in front of them, they all panicked. Many people were coughing loudly on their dirty beds and moaning in despair, as if they were waiting for death. The prosecutor, who still had a conscience and humanity, revealed everything. However, at many critical moments, some senior government officials tried to stop the prosecutor's investigation. They were afraid that it would cause a bad international impact. When Korea bid for the Olympic Games, it was also to speed up its economic development. At that time, Korea's economy had just recovered by relying on women's services to the American soldiers. The political situation was very turbulent, and the military was dictatorial. It was also during that time that Korea changed 3 presidents in 4 years. At that time, even the president's office kept making excuses for the prosecutor's investigation. The chief prosecutor at that time also forced the prosecutor to narrow the scope of the investigation and even asked him to stop the investigation. Despite all the interference, the humane prosecutor was able to collect some evidence, although the place was eventually sealed up and closed down, and the people who established the Brotherhood were also sentenced. They were sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment for misappropriating public funds. This humane prosecutor didn't have the power to change the situation, and he was helpless as well. Perhaps even now, hundreds and thousands of skeletons were still buried in that terrifying place. It had been a long time, and Jin Xiu and Jin Lexian had grown up. Their mother should have forgotten about it by now. But in recent years, because of this matter, she was hospitalized with mental illness. She was often delirious. At first, Jin Xiu didn't know why, but later, she suddenly figured it out. This was because the government had refused to discuss the matter again, and also refused to allow the opposition MPs to push for the investigation, saying that the evidence was too old to overturn. This made her mother very pained. Many victims like her mother who were still alive wanted to give them a real explanation. It shouldn't be so vague. In the past 2 years, Korea had begun to prepare for another world-class sports event, the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, Korea. Once this event was announced in Korea, the people who had suffered because of the Olympic Games in Seoul fell into the shadows of the past. Jin Xiu's mother also began to suffer from mental illness frequently. Recently, Jin Xiu became more and more aware of the reason for her mother's mental illness. She also wanted to tell Jean Lechien, but every time she opened her mouth, she couldn't say it. Recently, there had been so many disputes about the Winter Olympics. Some people even said that Hua-Xia athletes shouldn't participate in the Olympic Games. They also said that if Hua-Xia organized the East Olympic Games, Korean athletes wouldn't participate. Hua-Xia didn't care about these kinds of words at all. If Hua-Xia athletes didn't participate in the Olympic Games in Korea, 2 buildings in the Olympic Village would be idle. If Korean athletes didn't participate in the Olympic Games in Hua-Xia, Hua-Xia would only be idle on 1 floor. Not to mention comparing a country, even comparing a province to Korea would be considered bullying. Jean Lechien was still arguing with Zhua Meiyan. He said arrogantly, "You don't have the right to talk in front of me. Whatever our country wants to do, it's not up to you Chinese to comment. Who do you think you are? Any decision made by our country is right." Jean Lechien. That's enough. Jean Xiu couldn't bear it anymore. Have you forgotten how our father died? Suddenly, Jean Lechien stopped talking. At this moment, the memory of what had happened more than 20 years ago filled his mind. At that time, his mother had taken them to this slum despite her injuries, crying and telling them how his father had been beaten to death. All these memories filled Jean Lechien's mind. At this moment, Jean Lechien almost went crazy. He almost collapsed. He suddenly felt ashamed of himself as a Korean. He was filled with hatred and resentment toward his own country's government. He suddenly realized that no matter when, the people in power in Korea were hypocritical, disgusting, and disgusting. The person who had killed their father had the surname Park, and this woman's surname was also Park. This woman might have been prostituted by that man. Just think about the disgusting things in Korea. This was a feudal society. There was a huge difference between superiors and subordinates, and between seniors and juniors. The latter had to not retort when scolded, and not fight back when beaten. It was very common for people to curse in public, and Koreans were used to it. They even thought it was a form of courtesy. Courtesy my asterisks. They didn't even have basic respect, and they still had the nerve to talk about courtesy. Moreover, Korea was divided into different factions, and the power struggle was very serious. The scheming behind the scenes was really disgusting. Everyone was obsessed with money, and they used every opportunity to make money. Regardless of whether they were from the upper class or the lower class, the Korean men seemed to be living a life of eating, drinking, and whoring. Those who were rich would drink red wine, and after 2 rounds of drinking, they would find a prostitute to spend the night with. Those who were poor would drink cheap soju, and after 2 rounds of drinking, they would find a prostitute to spend the night with. This kind of social phenomenon was very normal in Korea. Don't mention the difference between men and women in front of me in the future. Jean Xiu stared at Jean Lechien and said, "I don't want to bow and scrape in front of you. I've had enough of the disgusting men in my country. They are as ugly as chrysanthemums, but they still ask their women to be beautiful. They are so stingy that they can only treat their women to streaky pork and not Korean beef. They still want to brag about their capabilities. This is our country's men. Jean Lechien. Don't learn from them." Jean Lechien lowered his head and did not say a word. "When I knew that you were developing in the United States, I was actually quite happy, because I thought you would become a gentleman. You would become different from the Korean men who are ugly, disgusting, stingy, wretched, and even obscene." Jean Xiu said, "But I didn't expect that after so many years abroad, your shares are still like this?" "Sister, I'm not like that. I don't mean that." Jean Lechien wanted to explain. "No." Jean Xiu sneered and said, "Then why do you always talk about Korean men and Hua-Xia women? In your heart, you think that women are not as high as you men. This is something in your bones, and you can't change it. You're a traditional Korean man." Jean Lechien was scolded by his sister and did not say a word. His sister had taken care of his mother for so many years, and he always felt that he owed his sister a lot. That was why he listened to his sister. "I don't want to talk about you anymore. You can go wherever you want to go. If you want to go back to the United States, then go back to the United States. Jin Xiu said, "If you look down on women, then don't ever appear in front of me and my mother again." "I didn't mean that." "I don't care what you mean. But you have forgotten how our father died. You have also forgotten how we spent 10 days in fear when we were 8 years old, and you have also forgotten how our mother looked when she appeared in front of us." Jin Xiu was really angry. Chapter 39:55. Jin Lexian shook his head and said painfully, "No, I didn't. I didn't forget. I didn't forget anything. I remember everything very clearly. I won't forget it for the rest of my life." "Then why are you still standing behind those high and mighty decision-makers?" Jin Xiu said loudly, "Back then, they forced us, who lived at the bottom of society, to death for the sake of their face. Our father died because of that, and our mother was left with psychological trauma and mental illness for the rest of her life. Do you remember who caused all of that? Those decision-makers you're protecting now. If it weren't for their ignorance, none of that would have happened." Jin Lexian clenched his fists. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't because that was the truth. All of this was caused by the actions of those high and mighty leaders. Now, the high and mighty people of Korea had once again made an ignorant and foolish decision. Who would be the ones who would be hurt in the end? In the end, it would be the people who were suffering. Right now, all the propaganda is saying that THAAD is good, but what exactly is good about it? Jin Xiu said, "Jin Lexian, although I'm not a cultured person and didn't go to a famous university, I'm not an ignorant person. I don't see how THAAD can benefit Korea at all." Benefit? She agreed with the U.S. Empire's National Security Agency to install THAAD, and she still wanted benefits? The Park woman agreed to the U.S. Empire's THAAD missile defense system in our country only because she wanted Korea to be tied to the U.S. Empire and Japan. Jin Xiu said, she didn't care about the objections of Xia and Russia. She didn't care about the anger of the Kim family next door. She didn't even care about the objections of the people of Korea. Jin Xiu got angrier as she spoke. She stubbornly decided to let Korea be the loyal follower of the U.S. Empire and Japan's strategy of containing Xia and Russia. She's willing to let Korea and Japan be the watchdogs of the U.S. Empire's strategy of balancing the Asia-Pacific region. Zhou Meiyan couldn't help but retort, "The Jin family next door won't go crazy. THAAD is a land-based high-altitude, long-range anti-missile system. Its intercepting altitude exceeds the atmosphere, and we know its maximum intercepting altitude and intercepting distance very well. We also know very well what level of ballistic missiles it's intercepting. This kind of technology has a high starting point and high risk. It's the only ground-based system that can intercept ballistic missiles in and out of the atmosphere. It's extremely ridiculous to say that this system is used to deal with the missile threat from the Jin family next door." Jin Xiu was stunned. Next door, the Kim family's missiles can't reach that high. The United States would never use a cannon to kill a fly. Ruan Qingshuang shook her head helplessly. "I also know that THAAD is nothing good for Korea. The president's decision is so stupid that I don't know whether to laugh or cry." Kim Soo said helplessly, "Actually, the biggest beneficiary of this whole thing is America and Japan. The biggest victim is Korea." Jin Lexian remained silent with his head lowered. "Jin Lexian, I know that most of the media in Korea are only reporting on Xia's countermeasures against us, but they don't explain why Xia is opposing our country and why ZAD is harmful to Korea. This has confused too many people," Jin Xiu said. Her eyes were glistening with tears of grievance. "Those in power even call people like me a leftist from the north, saying that we're close to the government. But we're the ones who truly love Korea and want Korea to be good. Those idiots are the ones who are trying to destroy our country." Zhou Meiyan glanced at Jin Xiu. She didn't expect her to say something like that. "You're much smarter than your president," Zhou Meiyan said to Jin Xiu. Ruan Qingshuang also nodded. "Indeed. Not only will ZAD not bring any safety to Korea, but it will also worsen the relationship between Korea and the neighboring countries. The situation on the peninsula will also worsen and become more complicated. This is obviously the US empire's need to restrict the development of China and Russia. The US empire is playing with fire, and Japan can't wait to push the conflict between China, Russia, and the US empire to the peninsula to avoid being burned by the US empire's strategic actions to restrict China and Russia. Zhou Meiyan said, Park's stupid actions not only put Korea in danger, but also allowed Japan to breathe a sigh of relief. Looking at the major events in the world over the past few years, America was trying to suppress Russia through the Ukraine crisis, the Crimea crisis, and the Syria crisis. However, Russia wasn't a pushover. A fighting nation wouldn't allow America to humiliate them. Therefore, they retaliated fiercely, causing America's plan to fail. The anger of the American empire could be imagined. They were so angry that they aimed their anger at Huaxia, who had firmly supported Russia. Fighting against two superpowers at the same time was an irrational political factor. However, it was also the inevitable result of America's strategy of suppressing Huaxia and Russia. This strategy allowed Huaxia and Russia to see America's sinister intentions. America's tyrannical desire for hegemony had caused America to lose its mind and lose its rationality. It would only accelerate its decline. Right now, America's European allies were already complaining. Zhou Meiyan felt that Jin Xiu was a reasonable person, so she said, America's military actions in the South China Sea and the Korean Peninsula are actually a show of swordplay. You should be able to see that, right? I feel that America originally wanted to start the Jiaoyu Islands dispute in the East China Sea, but the cunning Japanese didn't fall for it and pushed the dispute to the South China Sea and Korea, Jin Xiu said with a frown. That's right. It's because Japan's cunning old dog and was too smart and didn't fall for it anymore. That's why America couldn't wait to start a conflict with Korea in the South China Sea. Zhou Meiyan clapped her hands. Ruan Qingshuang smiled. In the end, the foolish president of the Philippines, Aquino, stepped down. The new president saw clearly that the real purpose of the US empire was not to help the Philippines, but to push them into war and conflict. The consequences are obvious. But didn't he also say some unpleasant things? Jin Xiu said, why didn't Huaxia target Philippines too much? This guy did say some things that America hoped for under the pressure and temptation of America's old dog and Japan's old dog. Zhou Meiyan nodded and said, but their attitude towards resolving the dispute peacefully with Huaxia is still firm. They know the consequences of offending Huaxia. If they offend Huaxia, their people might become monkeys who can only eat bananas for many years. Ruan Qingshuang continued, in comparison, the woman from your country with the surname Park foolishly caused Korea to fall into a conflict with Huaxia and Russia. Zhou Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang were too embarrassed to say that this stupid woman had underestimated Huaxia's strong opposition. She was completely under pressure from both home and abroad, and became the cannon fodder of America and Japan's old dog. Because of this, Japan's old dog was overjoyed. They even mocked Korea for being a stupid country. This matter also caused a lot of commotion. The Koreans did something stupid, and they weren't happy when they were scolded. They even wanted to ask Japan for an explanation. It's good that there are Koreans who can understand this matter, Zhou Meiyan said. Zhou Meiyan said, your country really needs more people like you. If there are more people like you, Huaxia will still be good neighbors with you. Jin Xiu lowered her head. Unfortunately, she was only a low-level citizen of Korea. She didn't have any right to speak. She only dared to say what she said in her own place when there were no outsiders. She definitely wouldn't dare to say it outside. After all, Jin Xiu was especially afraid of the hypocritical Korean government because of what happened to her parents. She was worried that those in power were demons who ate people without spitting out the bones. She was afraid that she would be arrested for speaking nonsense and locked up in a horrible place where she would be tortured every day without anyone knowing. Jin Xiu was really afraid. Everything that happened to her parents had left a psychological shadow in her heart. This psychological shadow would follow Jin Xiu for the rest of her life. Jin Lixian finally apologized sincerely. He knelt in front of Zhou Meiyan and Ruan Qingshuang. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. Thank you for saving my sister and me. I won't go back to America anymore. Don't say that to me. I have no intention of saving you. Go and say thank you to your sister, Sua Mian said and left without looking back. Ruan Qingxuang quickly followed behind her and left the coffee shop. Chapter 3956. After Su Yun cracked the computer system, he immediately took out a portable drive that he had prepared beforehand and prepared to copy the list of people involved in the money laundering. However, just as he found the file where the list was stored according to Baldwin's instructions, a gunshot rang out. Su Yun immediately ducked to the ground and watched as the computer was sent flying into the wall and fell to the ground. Baldwin was also dumbfounded. They had all seen the sniper hiding on the roof of a villa not far away. Lin Gu immediately ran to the scene of the crime. Su Yun had already stepped forward and restrained Baldwin. With a slightly trembling and angry voice, he said, "It seems that I have no choice but to let you die today. This is definitely not my intention." Baldwin said nervously, "I promise, this is definitely not my intention." In addition to Su Yun and Lin Gu in the room, the situation outside was also chaotic. Everyone opened their eyes nervously and looked in the direction of the gunshot. Natasha instantly flew into a rage. "Courtney, what are you doing? Do you want the boss to die an unnatural death?" Courtney glared at Natasha and angrily retorted, "I've been here all along. This wasn't an order from me, okay? If you think this has something to do with me, then shoot me to death. But I'm telling you, this has nothing to do with me." "Then what are you waiting for? Go and see who did it," Natasha said to a few people with some status present. "Bring him to me as soon as possible." Courtney stared at those people and said angrily, "Bring him there quickly." The outside of the villa was a mess. Dozens of people ran toward the villa where the sniper shot came from. Everyone's face was filled with panic and surprise. It was as if they were doomed if they did not do this well. "This has nothing to do with us. Everyone here is doing what you want them to do. I promise, the person who fired the shot has nothing to do with us." Natasha shouted into the villa, "I will bring the person who fired the shot to you. Please give me some time. Just a little bit of time is enough." Su Yun and Lin Gu could hear Natasha's voice outside, but they had no intention of giving her face. Lin Gu flashed to the window and hid behind the wall. He said to Natasha in the courtyard, "Cut the crap. If it's not your people, why would they shoot at the computer? Don't think we don't know what you're planning. It's really not what you think it is, I promise." Baldwin was a very perceptive person. He could sense Su Yun's anger and murderous intent. "Give me another chance. I promise there won't be any more problems." "What's the point of your promise?" Su Yun had lost all patience. Baldwin nodded. "Yes, of course. The computer's computer." Su Yun said coldly, "You know very well what I want. I want the list. Now that you don't have the list, do you still think you have the qualifications to negotiate with me?" "I still have the list," Baldwin blurted out without hesitation. Su Yun was stunned. He frowned and looked at Baldwin. "What do you mean?" "I'm a Colombian. Everything I have is in Colombian," Baldwin said. Baldwin said, "This computer isn't the only one with the list. I also have a backup on my computer in Colombia. I know you want the list. The list is more important than my life. Don't you think so?" "Baldwin, this computer is destroyed, and the list is gone. Your attitude has really changed a lot, hasn't it?" Su Yun said coldly. "I'm starting to wonder if I should trust you. Please trust me. I will never disappoint anyone who trusts me." Baldwin nodded solemnly. "I can assure you that I will never disappoint you. Come with me to Colombian. You will definitely get the list you want. Everyone involved in money laundering in Huaxia is on the list." Su Yun couldn't help but laugh. "As long as you give me the list, you will disappoint everyone on the list who trusts you. But you're telling me that you will never disappoint anyone who trusts you. Saying something like that is like slapping yourself in the face. Baldwin, you really can say anything." Baldwin was stunned. His words were indeed contradictory. But at this time, what else could he do? Su Yun's murderous aura was very strong. If I can't even protect my own life, who can I help keep the secret? Baldwin said. At this time, my life is more important than anyone's secret. I have to make a choice, don't I? There's an old saying in Huaxia, every man for himself. I'm not wrong, am I? Every man for himself. Su Yun clapped his hands. You understand this saying? Yes, of course I understand. Baldwin nodded. As long as you give me a way out, I promise I won't disappoint you. I swear to God. After saying that, Baldwin made a standard gesture of swearing an oath. If I can't give you a complete list, I'm willing to be abandoned by God. Baldwin's oath was actually very vicious for him. Lin Gu spat. Don't talk about God. You know better than anyone that if there really is a God in this world, he would have killed a bastard like you long ago. How could you create such a huge criminal empire? Baldwin was speechless. I'll tell you, Baldwin. Swear that if you don't have the list, your son won't have chrysanthemum eyes. If you already have a son and your son has chrysanthemum eyes, swear that your grandson won't have chrysanthemum eyes. If you have a grandson, swear that your great-grandson won't have chrysanthemum eyes. Lin Gu said seriously. Baldwin looked at Lin Gu in shock. Lin Gu waved his hand and said, Forget it. That's too complicated. Just swear that if you don't have the list, none of your descendants who are related to you will be born with chrysanthemum eyes. Baldwin was stunned for a long time. This was the first time he had heard of such an oath in his life. Say it. Lin Gu glared. Baldwin had no choice but to raise his hand and swear. I, Baldwin, swear to God that if I don't have the list, my descendants won't have chrysanthemum eyes. Not swear to God. Swear to me. Lin Gu said. Just treat me as your God. I'm the chrysanthemum-picking divine hand. Swear to me, the chrysanthemum-picking divine hand. Baldwin was dumbfounded. He was speechless. His attitude had already made it clear that he definitely had the list in his hands. He also knew that Su Yun and Lin Gu really had the guts to take his old life. Otherwise, how could a person who had experienced great storms be led by the nose so easily by Lin Gu? Baldwin, it's not that I didn't give you a chance. It's just that you couldn't grasp it when I gave it to you, Su Yun said calmly. How many chances do you think I'll give you? Things like opportunities should be precious if they're rare. If you give them too many, they won't be worth much. No, I only want one last chance. Just one, Baldwin said. I believe that the list is very important to you. Is that why you're so unscrupulous? Su Yun said. Baldwin shook his head and said firmly, Although I'm not a righteous person, I'm someone who dares to take responsibility for my actions. If that person was intentionally arranged by me, I won't deny it. You didn't have a chance to arrange it, Lin Gu said coldly. You're right. I didn't have a chance to arrange it, so it wasn't my intention at all. You shouldn't put this mistake on my head. Baldwin took the opportunity to say. Su Yun finally calmed down. Then I'll give you one last chance, Baldwin. If you can't grasp it, then don't blame me. I won't. I'm someone who never wastes an opportunity. I also promise you that no one will waste my chance. Baldwin's expression was very serious. At that moment, there was a commotion outside the villa. It seemed that the sniper had been brought back by those people and thrown directly in front of Natasha, who was at the front of the crowd. The sniper's face was filled with panic. He originally thought that he would be praised, but he didn't expect to end up like this. He had no idea why it was like this. Chapter 39:57. Natasha's soft and gentle demeanor from before was gone. She stepped forward and kicked the sniper in the face. The latter immediately started bleeding profusely. It was a tragic sight. Who told you to shoot? Natasha's ferocious look sent a chill down everyone's spines. Although all of Baldwin's subordinates knew that Natasha was not only their boss's think tank and plaything, but also the boss's most threatening bodyguard. They had never seen Natasha hurt anyone. Natasha's first move today was so vicious. How could they not be afraid? Even Courtney could not help but break out in a cold sweat. The sniper's face was covered in blood. His voice was filled with fear and grief. "Stop shooting. I was just working for the boss, for the corporation. I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you doing this to me?" After saying that, the sniper spat out 2 teeth. His face was filled with fear and resentment. He could not understand why Natasha would treat him like this. In his opinion, he had destroyed the computer containing the boss's secrets with 1 shot, preventing the secrets from being taken away by outsiders. He had done something meritorious. It was fine if he did not get a reward, but he was punished violently by Natasha. It was hard to accept. Working for the corporation? Working for the boss? Is this what you're doing? Natasha said fiercely. Do you know how much danger you're putting the boss in? The sniper still could not understand. Although the boss is in the hands of those 2, there are so many of us surrounding them. They definitely won't dare to do anything to the boss. Unless they don't want to live anymore. They dared to attack the boss. They dared to hold the boss hostage and enter the study to get the list when surrounded by so many of us. It means that they aren't afraid of death. Natasha's eyes burned with anger. At that moment, the sky was starting to brighten. Everyone who had stayed up all night was mentally exhausted. People in this situation were the easiest to get angry, and Natasha was no exception. Originally, the situation was under control, but this shot would definitely enrage Su Yun and Lin Gu. Natasha did not dare to imagine the terrible consequences if those 2 attacked the boss. Once that happened, the entire Baldwin group would fall into chaos. Everyone would go crazy, and everything would go out of control. This was something that Natasha did not even dare to think about, but now it was really possible for it to happen. Have they already made a move on the boss? The sniper asked in horror. These words made everyone who was in a sleepy period perk up. Everyone was stunned by the question. No one knew the boss's current situation. No one knew if the 2 people inside had already made a move on the boss. Courtney exclaimed, "Everyone, get your weapons ready." Hundreds of people began to pick up the guns and ammunition on the ground and began to load bullets into the magazines. Each of them looked flustered, afraid that they would miss something if they were a step too late. "Are you crazy?" Natasha said angrily. "Stop." Before confirming the boss's condition, everyone had better behave themselves. No one should do anything to provoke the other. Put down your bullets. Right away. Courtney was furious as well. Those 2 are fugitives. If we can't take the initiative at a time like this, once they make a move on the boss and try to escape, what are we going to use to kill them? Can you guarantee that we will be able to subdue those 2 with our bare hands? Courtney, are you crazy? If something happens to the boss, I will be the first to know. Natasha raised her wrist. There was a smartwatch on her wrist. The smartwatch was bound with a software that could monitor Baldwin's heart rate at any time. The device had always been on Baldwin's neck, allowing Natasha to know Baldwin's heart rate at any time. Baldwin's heart had some minor problems. This was a device made for his safety and health. Now, however, it had a new function. Courtney was speechless. If Baldwin were to die, Natasha would be the first to know. The smartwatch would issue a warning. At present, the smartwatch was operating normally. It only showed that Baldwin's heart rate was increasing. Based on this, Natasha could tell that Baldwin's current situation was not good. At the very least, he was feeling fear. Natasha was certain that if the boss was feeling fear, it meant that the 2 of them really dared to kill him. Otherwise, considering the storms that the boss had experienced, he would not have his heart rate fluctuate over such a small matter. At present, Baldwin was feeling very nervous. Thus, the display of his heart rate on the smartwatch was very unstable. Since you know that they did not make a move, why are you doing this to him? Courtney had to ask. The sniper was a young man whom Courtney admired. He was a sniper who had been fired from the Marine Corps. It was said that he had insulted a Korean woman back when he was stationed in Korea and was sent back to his country. Although the young man was rough around the edges, he was bold and meticulous. Otherwise, he would not have created such a storm on his own. Perhaps this was why Courtney admired the sniper. Courtney himself was a bold and meticulous person when he was young, and because of this, Baldwin appreciated him and put him in an important position. Therefore, Courtney valued people who had similar personalities to him. Then, what should I do? Indulge him? Natasha said. He did something outside of his orders. He put the boss in danger. Should I praise him? Courtney, I know you admire him. However, this is not the time for you to admire your younger self, all right? This is all about the boss's safety. Courtney was angered by Natasha's sharp words. What do you mean by that? Are you questioning my motives? Are you doubting that I was the one who arranged this? He is one of your men. Don't think I don't know that. Natasha glared at him. If you did not arrange for him to do so, would he climb up to the roof of someone else's villa? Courtney was rendered speechless by Natasha's words. That was the truth. He did arrange for the sniper to shoot. However, he did not order the sniper to shoot. What happened later made it impossible for him to tell the sniper not to shoot. Thus, the sniper was unaware of Natasha's latest order. Natasha looked at Courtney and said, "Why aren't you saying anything? Why don't you deny it? Tell me he is not one of your men. Do you dare tell me that? You have no way of telling me he is not one of your men. Because he is one of your men, isn't he? I was the one who arranged it. I was also the one who gave the order. However, all of this was for the sake of the company." Courtney admitted. "I told him not to hurt the two people inside. I was worried that the two of them would fly into a rage out of humiliation. I was also the one who told him not to let the two of them obtain the secrets on the boss's computer. Were all of those decisions wrong? Do you really want the two of them to obtain the list of names they want?" Natasha nearly fainted from Courtney's anger. "I have said it many times. The boss's safety is our #1 priority." Courtney waved his hand angrily and said, "If not for the fact that the situation was too tense and I forgot to inform him, he would not have opened fire so easily. He has already done a good job. He only shot the computer at the most critical moment, all right?" "Courtney, have you forgotten the boss's words? Right now, I am the one who has the final say. My words are the boss's words. All of you have to listen to my orders." Natasha finally brought out the imperial sword that Baldwin had given her to suppress Courtney. Courtney's emotions were somewhat out of control. Natasha did not want him to ruin the whole thing. Due to those words, Courtney could only wave his hand and turn around without saying a word. He did not want to see Natasha anymore, nor did he want to hear any of her orders. The sniper looked at Courtney in horror. If even Courtney was unable to protect him, wouldn't he be punished to death by Natasha? "Everything I do is for the boss, for the company. Everything I do is for the greater good. Everything I do is for everyone." The sniper kept explaining himself. However, after hearing his explanation, Natasha showed no mercy. She attacked again. This time, she hit the sniper's throat. Before the sniper could finish his words, he fell to the ground and fainted. P.S. In the past 2 days, quite a number of reading friends have contacted me, asking if I am really going to finish this book. Let's recuperate here. It is time to wrap up the book. Truth be told, before I started writing this book, I had a vague idea of the main character, goal, conflict, ending, all of that. The structure of the novel, the plot, the characters' personalities, relationships, and many other aspects were not done well. I have to admit that. Only after looking through the book did I realize that there were flaws everywhere. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you who are reading this. Thank you for accompanying me in my growth. Soo Yun's murderous aura was especially thick. This meant that Su Yun had killed many souls. How could Baldwin not be afraid? Boss. Natasha looked at Baldwin and said nervously, "Please believe us. We will comply with all of your requests and promise that we will never do anything inappropriate again. Please give us one more chance." "Boss, it's my fault." Courtney lowered his head in self-reproach. He had to admit that what happened just now did affect Baldwin's life. This was unforgivable in the eyes of many people. Courtney could only hope that the boss would look at him more highly and understand him and forgive him. "Let's not talk about this anymore. Now, prepare to fly back to Colombia," Baldwin said calmly. "Everyone can just pretend that nothing happened today. Deal with everything as soon as possible. Don't make the New York police too nervous." Everyone looked at Baldwin in surprise. Baldwin's arrangement this time was too surprising. He had given up all resistance. Courtney looked at the boss in disbelief. He could not believe that this was what the boss had said. In his mind, although the boss was not an indomitable person, he was not someone who would be easily subdued. And now, he had chosen to submit? This was unacceptable. This was intolerable to Courtney. This was disappointing to Courtney. Could it be that the boss had been with a woman for too long and had become like a woman himself? Why was it like this? Courtney could not accept this fact and kept shaking his head. He could admit his mistake and even die because of this matter, but he could not accept the fact that Baldwin had given in. Natasha heaved a sigh of relief. At the very least, there wouldn't be any danger before they reached Colombia. Knowing this was enough for her. Everything could be considered after they reached Colombia. Only then could the boss safely get through this. "Boss, please rest assured. I will arrange everything properly," Natasha said. Natasha said, "Everything will go smoothly from now on. There won't be any more accidents, I promise. Your family likes to make promises, but your promises are completely useless." Lin Gu could not help but say, "To me, your promises are like farts. They are meaningless. We can't be bothered to listen." "There will be no more accidents this time," Natasha promised. Su Yun gestured for Lin Gu to bring Baldwin out. Since Baldwin was under Lin Ji's control, Su Yun had nothing to fear. He strode out of the villa. The hundreds of people outside the villa were stunned. They did not dare to act rashly because of Baldwin's words and Natasha's orders. "I know that some people will be unhappy. They will think that today's matter was ruined because of your boss and this woman's wrong decision." Su Yun smiled and said, "But I want to tell this kind of person that this woman and your boss are much smarter than you. They know what kind of situation to be in and what kind of things to do, unlike you who are impulsive and brainless." Courtney was incensed on the spot. Su Yun's words were directed at him. "That's enough." Courtney glared at Su Yun. "They all made the wrong decision today, so you are happy. You know that I am the only one with a clear mind, so you are happy, right? You still have a clear mind." Su Yun sneered. "You know very well what the worst-case scenario is. In your mind, the worst-case scenario is that we kill Baldwin and you kill us." Courtney was stunned. He swore that he had never thought of that. At the very least, he had never thought of that in his mind. However, he was also hesitant because he didn't dare to think too much about whether Courtney had such a thought in his mind. He was afraid that he would discover it, and if he did, he wouldn't know what to do. "Courtney, you're being too idealistic, because it's impossible for you to kill us," Su Yun said. "I'm standing right in front of you right now, and you still can't kill me." Baldwin was under Lin Ji's control. Naturally, Courtney did not dare to act rashly. "You only dare to say that now," Courtney said, clenching his fists. "With or without him, I still dare to say that." Su Yun pointed at Baldwin, who was under their control, and said to Courtney, "If you think you can do it, then do it. Let's see if it is as you think, that you can turn the situation around." Su Yun wanted to make an example out of one person to warn the others. The people who could surround them were all members of the Baldwin group in New York. At the very least, they had some achievements. Su Yun dared to guarantee that these people had their own little abacus in their hearts. There was no need to doubt this. Therefore, if he wanted to solve these people's messy thoughts, the best way was to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Courtney, you are the best chicken, the most flamboyant chicken, the most domineering chicken. As long as you deal with him, the others will not dare to make any more schemes. Soo-yoon believed that. That was why he had stepped forward to provoke Courtney. Only by letting Courtney explode would he have a reason to kill the chicken. With so many little monkeys watching, such a good opportunity would not come again. There was no need to wait until they reached Columbia to kill the chicken. If they had to do this sooner or later, it was better to do it sooner rather than later. Chapter 39:59. You'll die a horrible death. Courtney finally couldn't hold it in any longer and flashed his sharp fangs. 2 different sharp military knives. This was Courtney's trump card, and also the most important ability that allowed him to reach his current position. A faint smile appeared on Soo-yoon's face. He didn't expect Courtney to be set on fire so easily. Facing someone who knew how to use a knife, Soo-yoon could more or less find some amusement. The military saber was probably one of the few cold weapons still in service in the era of firearms. To put it bluntly, many people still played with sabers. What they wanted was to display the most thorough aesthetics of violence, not lethality. After all, no matter how sharp a military knife was, it could only kill the person in front of it. However, the violent beauty it displayed in the process of killing was not something that missiles, nuclear weapons, biochemical weapons, and so on did not possess. This was probably the reason why so many people still loved cold weapons. The military knives in Courtney's hands were different. In his left hand was a tactical double-edged sword known as Hell's Guard Dog. It was the only combat knife in the world that was mass-produced using VG-10 stainless steel. This steel gave the blade incomparable strength and super-strong blade retention. The black Teflon treatment on the surface eliminated the reflection of the military knife. It could be used for sneak attacks at critical moments, and it also increased the blade's resistance to corrosion. The symmetrical rubber handle of this dagger was very comfortable and stable. Whether it was used with one's dominant hand or not, it was very easy to use from the start. From the name of the knife, it was obvious that it originated from the fighting dog that guarded the gates of hell in ancient Norwegian mythology. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was to deal with. And the military knife in Courtney's right hand was also a combat weapon. Tiger knife. The ferocious tiger saber's shape was slightly strange. It was so strange that at first glance, people would feel a sense of horror and discomfort. There was a semicircle at the bottom of the ferocious tiger saber's blade. The tiger knife was too sharp, but it had a guard to protect it. The upper edge of the knife was a straight false edge, and the back of the knife had teeth. Although it wasn't sharp, it was enough to kill someone in the hands of an expert swordsman. Courtney was someone who knew how to play with knives. He placed his index finger on the front of the knife handle. This way of holding the knife showed that he had experience with knives. Whether it was a sudden stab or a wrist cut, this kind of saber-holding technique would allow him to use it with ease. The tip of the ferocious tiger saber was exceptionally sharp and was very suitable for stabbing. With 2 military knives in hand, Courtney's eyes shone with a ferocious light. Many of the people present had seen Courtney use swords, but only Baldwin had seen him use dual swords. No one else had seen Courtney use dual swords. Most of the time, Courtney only needed a single blade to deal with his problems, so there was no need for him to reveal his twin blades. But now, he had already revealed his twin blades before the battle had even begun. It was obvious that the anger in his heart could not be quelled, and he could not wait to kill Soo-yoon. "Courtney, are you crazy? Put away your knife." Natasha's eyes were like lightning. "Boss is still in their hands. What do you want? Do you have to put Boss in danger?" Natasha's words put Courtney in a dilemma. Courtney had revealed his knives because of Soo-yoon's provocation. If he really did make a move, Natasha would say that he did not care about Boss's safety, which would push him into the abyss of betrayal. Even if Courtney could defeat Soo-yoon, he would become a thorn in Boss's side, a thorn in Boss's side. Boss would hold a grudge against him for everything he had done today. Courtney did not know how to refute Natasha. He knew very well that Natasha was too smart for him to subdue. So, he had no idea how to deal with the current situation. He forced me to do this. Am I supposed to be at their mercy today? Boss has already been under their control for an entire night. Can't we resist? Courtney's hands, which were holding onto his knives, could not help but tremble slightly. No, we can't let them do as they please anymore. You really don't care about Boss at all, Natasha said coldly. You guys, take Courtney to the car and keep an eye on him. Don't let him out to cause trouble again. You want to detain me? Courtney glared. Boss hasn't even said anything yet, and you want to take me under control? You asked for it, Natasha said. At this time, Natasha wanted to detain Courtney for her own good. Although Courtney was indeed her biggest obstacle when it came to power struggles, Natasha had to admit that New York was orderly because of Courtney's control. So, Natasha did not want anything to happen to Courtney. If that happened, he would not be able to work for the group. Now that Su Yun had openly provoked him, it was obvious that he had come prepared. Once Courtney got angry, he would fall into the other party's trap. When that happened, Natasha would not be able to save him even if she wanted to. Unfortunately, Natasha couldn't say these words to Courtney's face. For a male chauvinist like Courtney, saying such words was equivalent to humiliating him. He would never understand, so Natasha had no choice but to resort to a more violent method. Unfortunately, Courtney did not understand the real reason for Natasha's actions at all. He immediately retaliated in rage. Courtney, get back in the car. Don't let me see you again. Baldwin scolded angrily. He finally spoke. Baldwin spoke because he realized Natasha's real motive. He also saw through Su Yun's thoughts at the moment. Courtney was the only one who was in the dark. When he heard his boss speak, Courtney was stunned. He allowed the two people beside him to hold his arms down. Boss, even you are saying that? Courtney, who could not understand, was in a bad mood. He fell into a rage that he could not extricate himself from. Listen to my orders. Baldwin did not have the time to explain everything to him. This was the only thing he could do. First, he let him leave Su Yun's provocation and go to a quiet environment to calm down. This could be considered as favoritism. However, Courtney misunderstood all of this. He could not understand why his boss would make such a decision. Boss, you will regret it. You shouldn't let this woman control your thoughts. Baldwin's face was filled with anger. What nonsense are you talking about? Boss, it's already like this and you still won't let me speak. Look at you now. No matter what she says, you go along with her. Courtney said. Is Natasha our boss, or are you our boss? If you want me to listen to a woman, then I shouldn't be here. Baldwin was also infuriated by Courtney's ignorance. You shouldn't be here in the first place. Get lost. If Courtney could really leave, it would be a good thing for Baldwin. This misunderstanding would be cleared up sooner or later. Unfortunately, Courtney would not leave so obediently. Even if he wanted to, Su Yun would not let him leave. Getting rid of Courtney here today was Su Yun's plan. It had to be carried out. Boss, you're telling me to leave? Courtney was so shocked that he could not speak. This was worse than Natasha, who only told him to go back to the car. Baldwin was blinded by anger. However, at this moment, telling Courtney to leave was the best decision. Get lost. You don't need to come back to help me anymore. From now on, you are just you, Courtney. You have nothing to do with me, Baldwin. What a nothing to do with you. Courtney was rendered speechless by those words. All the resentment and grievances in his heart erupted in an instant. Courtney laughed maniacally. I never thought that after risking my life for you for the past 20 years, you would tell me to get lost in return. Boss, I really don't know if I should thank you. Get lost. Baldwin was somewhat hysterical. You are heartless to me, but I can't let others call me unrighteous. Courtney said. Today, I will do one last thing for you. Consider it my repayment for all the years of grooming you. Regardless of life or death, just pretend that I never existed. As soon as he said that, Courtney attacked Su Yun. The two swords in his hands, one above and one below, one on the left and one on the right, were aimed at the two vital points on Su Yun's body. Chapter 3960. Su Yun reacted quickly. His body twisted in an inconceivable manner as he dodged Courtney's stab at his face. He then followed up with a kick to Courtney's right hand, which was holding the tiger saber. Courtney almost dropped the saber in pain, but he knew the advantage a weapon could bring to a person. He clenched his teeth and held the saber hilt in place. Su Yun took the opportunity to take a step back to avoid the threat of Courtney's saber. Courtney's backhand missed, and he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He combined his two sabers and stabbed at the center of Su Yun's chest. People who were burning with anger often couldn't control their strength, so Courtney used almost all of his strength in this attack. Su Yun didn't dodge. Instead, he stepped forward and reversed control of Courtney's two sabers with a Tai Chi cloud hand. He then used the force to pull back, and Courtney stumbled forward, almost stabbing himself with his saber. The onlookers realized the danger and retreated, at least doubling the size of the one-on-one circle. Courtney's first three moves were all easily countered by Su Yun, and he himself was at a disadvantage. Naturally, he wasn't happy about it. However, the battle between the two of them was the same as a battle between three armies. Courtney had failed to land 3 moves in a row. His initial ferocity had been exhausted, and by the time he wanted to attack again, he was already exhausted. Su Yun smiled slightly and raised his chin at Courtney, indicating for him to continue. Courtney could clearly feel Su Yun's contempt for him, so he once again stabbed at Su Yun. This time, Su Yun didn't even care. He took a step back and dodged Courtney's saber. He then hooked Courtney's ankle with his foot. This caused Courtney to stumble back several meters in front of the crowd. It was a complete loss of face. I'm not one to underestimate my opponent, but you really can't pique my interest. Su Yun smiled faintly. He had never revealed his true strength, because he knew that the real expert by Baldwin's side wasn't someone like Courtney, who only knew a few tricks, but Natasha. Since Courtney had lost control and Natasha couldn't calm him down, she could only use the opportunity when Courtney attacked Su Yun to analyze Su Yun's skills and strength. Unfortunately, Su Yun didn't need to display his true strength to deal with Courtney. As of now, Su Yun's strength had already quietly climbed to the 9th level of the Earth Profound realm. The current him could basically laugh at all the top experts in the world. Other than a few people that he might not be able to compare with, there was basically no one who could pose a threat to him. Natasha might be an expert, but she was definitely not a match for Su Yun. Courtney was naturally not someone worth mentioning. Among the experts in the underground world, someone like Courtney could at most be considered a super expert who had just caught a glimpse of the door. Even Lin Gu could easily insta-kill him. Natasha frowned. Courtney had really disappointed her. She couldn't even determine the opponent's strength. All of this was very depressing for Natasha. Do you think you can make me back down by provoking me like this? Courtney had already lost his rationality due to the humiliation. If it was his former calm self, he definitely wouldn't have gone head-to-head with Su Yun. It was absolutely meaningless and stupid. Baldwin could also see the fact that Courtney was at an absolute disadvantage. He still had a strong sense of pity for Courtney. If Courtney really died here today, he would be especially heartbroken. The fact that Su Yun and Lin Gu dared to come to the United States alone to fight against them meant that they must be extremely strong. As the saying goes, the strong are bold. This was a proverb from Hua Xia. It meant that the bold must have the ability to make them bold. Those who didn't have the ability didn't have the right to be bold. Therefore, after Baldwin determined the true purpose of the two's visit, he was certain that Su Yun and Lin Gu were not ordinary people. Courtney couldn't possibly be a match for them. Even Natasha might not necessarily be a match for them. Baldwin had seen with his own eyes how strong Natasha was. However, Natasha had no intention of making a move against the two of them. It was obvious that she couldn't easily see through their strength. This made Baldwin worried. Don't you think it's shameful for you to still be standing here? Baldwin suddenly opened his mouth. You have no right to stand in front of others and say this. It's not too late to scram now. Don't continue to embarrass yourself here. Courtney glanced at Baldwin. Boss, at least I'm still working for you. I'm not like the others who have all become cowards who don't dare to speak. I don't need you to work for me, Baldwin said coldly. Also, don't treat smart people as cowards. Sometimes, the surface is just the surface. Even Su Yun could hear such an obvious reminder. Baldwin was telling Courtney to be smarter and think about the current situation. Being a coward, for the time being, was not a sign of weakness. It was what a smart person should do. However, Courtney, whose rationality had long been swallowed by anger, couldn't care about that. He couldn't understand the deeper meaning behind Baldwin's words. Mr. Baldwin, don't you think you're talking a little too much? Su Yun turned his head and smiled at Baldwin. He used his own way to remind Baldwin to stop making useless reminders. At this time, no one could save him. Baldwin was stunned for a moment. He didn't know how to answer Su Yun. Lin Gu did something that shocked everyone. In front of so many people from Baldwin's criminal syndicate, Lin Gu pointed a gun at the back of Baldwin's head with one hand and slapped Baldwin's mouth with the other hand. It must be known that there were hundreds of Baldwin's men watching at this moment. Pa! The slap landed heavily on Baldwin's lips. Perhaps it wouldn't be so painful that he would rather die. It was just a light blow that would numb him for a dozen seconds. However, this blow would cause Baldwin to lose a lot of face and prestige. Baldwin was also shocked by Lin Ji's slap on the lips. Although he admitted that he was a prisoner and admitted that he didn't dare to do anything to refute the two, it didn't mean that he could be humiliated by them at will. No matter what, he was Baldwin. He was the creator of the largest criminal syndicate in America. The silence at the scene was like the air had frozen. Su Yun didn't expect Lin Gu to do this. He naturally didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lin Gu didn't care at all. He didn't take Baldwin seriously at all. Do you not remember your surname if I don't hit you a few times? Have you forgotten what situation you are in now? Do you have the right to speak here? If it weren't for the pistol at the back of Baldwin's head, he would have been furious. He certainly wouldn't have cared about the current situation. He couldn't endure this kind of reprimand. Although Baldwin didn't fly into a rage because of the pistol at his head, his burning eyes stared at Lin Gu. Lin Gu wasn't willing to look at it. What are you looking at? You're not convinced, right? Although Baldwin didn't say, I'm looking at you, his eyes didn't retreat. He still stared at Lin Gu. If eyes could kill, there would be at least a few hundred holes in Lin Ji's body. Look again. Lin Gu suddenly raised his hand and made a poking gesture. No matter how strong Baldwin's momentum was, it was completely destroyed by Lin Ji's action. Baldwin had never been so humiliated in his life. Not only was he beaten in front of so many of his men, but he also withdrew his gaze in front of so many of his men. This kind of complete defeat cast a shadow over Baldwin's heart. If he could live for a few more years, he believed that he would never forget everything that happened today. He would never forget it. Lin Gu saw that Baldwin's momentum was defeated, and he nodded with satisfaction. That's more like it. As a captive, you have to act like a captive. Don't always think of yourself as an old ambassador. You are the boss in front of this group of trash, but in front of me, you are not even a fart. Do you understand? Baldwin swallowed the humiliation and suppressed his anger. He kept telling himself in his heart, a real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. This is nothing. Chapter 3961. In order to calm himself down, Baldwin concentrated on thinking about some of the stories he had seen when he was studying Huaxia culture and world culture. There was a story about one of the most outstanding military strategists in Huaxia history. Baldwin forgot his name, but he remembered the general meaning of the story. It was said that the man lost his parents when he was very young. Every day, he caught a few fish in exchange for pocket money to survive. He even needed the charity of an old woman who washed silk cotton to survive. As a result, he was repeatedly discriminated against and ridiculed by the people around him. There was once when a group of hooligans humiliated him in public. One of them said to him, "Don't look at how tall and big you are, and how you carry a sword. But deep down, you are a coward. If you have the ability, use your sword to stab me. If you don't dare, crawl under my crotch." Then, the man knew that things were not good for him because he was alone. He would definitely be at a disadvantage if he fought with so many people. Then, in front of many people, he crawled under the man's crotch. Hua Xia even came up with an idiom, the humiliation of crotch. However, this did not prevent the man from becoming one of the 4 military sages of Hua Xia, becoming the founding hero of Western Han, and becoming the representative of Hua Xia's military ideology and strategists. In addition, Baldwin also took out the story of Wellington. Although Wellington was beaten to death by Napoleon, he still defeated Napoleon in the end. Although there was a bit of luck involved, at least he won. There was also Cao Cao, who was known as the #1 traitor in Hua Xia. Baldwin had read the translated romance of the 3 Kingdoms. In it, this ambitious and ruthless man was beaten to the point of pissing his pants in several battles. He was chased by a fierce general called Ma Chao and was so scared that he shaved his beard. Moreover, he was stopped by Guan Yu in Huarongdao and begged for mercy. He did not look like a boss at all. There was also Liu Bang, who Baldwin felt was very shameless. He took Xianyang City by himself, but because his forces were not as strong as Xiang Yu's, he obediently gave it up. He did not feel ashamed at all. There was also Sun Xiongxiong pretending to be crazy in order to save his life. In any case, there were many powerful people in history who knew when to yield and when not to yield. If he couldn't be flexible, he definitely wouldn't be able to achieve great things. In fact, Baldwin used to be a very flexible person. It was just that he was no longer used to a life of grievance after he had gained his status. That was why he had forgotten this skill of his. Faced with Lin Ji's disdain and humiliation, Baldwin finally remembered that he was also a flexible person. The silence lasted for quite a while before it was finally broken by Courtney. No matter what Baldwin said to Courtney, Courtney was grateful to Baldwin. However, Baldwin's words made Courtney realize that the boss did not really want him to leave. Instead, he wanted him to be smart so that he could stay alive. This made Courtney very touched. Feeling touched, Courtney couldn't control his anger. He knew that he couldn't beat Su Yun, so he decided to trade his life for Su Yun's. Even if he had to die, he would kill this guy who humiliated his boss. Thus, without any warning, Courtney attacked Lin Gu. Unfortunately, all of his actions were under Su Yun's control. Although Su Yun was not worried about Lin Gu, he knew that with Courtney's abilities, there was no way he could hurt Lin Gu. However, Su Yun's conditioned reflexes allowed him to attack. Su Yun stopped Courtney. With a push from Su Yun's cloud hand, Courtney was pushed back several meters. The furious Courtney no longer cared about who he wanted to kill. Instead, he turned his blade toward Su Yun. It was a direct stab. Su Yun's foot hooked Courtney's wrist and the military knife in Courtney's hand was kicked away, falling to the ground with a clang. Courtney no longer cared about anything else. Although he only had one knife left in his hand, he recklessly stabbed toward Su Yun. Su Yun easily dodged the attack. The fallen military knife was picked up by someone behind Courtney. Courtney saw it from the corner of his eyes and shouted, "Bring it over." Dual military knives could at least double his attack power. The person who picked up the knife did not dare to step forward for fear of accidentally injuring himself. He could only extend his hand to hand the military knife over from afar. Courtney had no choice but to divert his attention to retrieve the knife. The moment he was distracted, Su Yun took the initiative to kick him in the back for the first time. This kick caused Courtney to suddenly accelerate and stagger 2 steps. With a PU sound, the military knife in the hand of the person who handed him the knife stabbed into Courtney's chest. Courtney felt a sharp pain in his chest before going numb. He opened his mouth to speak but was unable to make a sound. A glaring red liquid sprayed out from his mouth and blood kept flowing out from the military knife in his chest. Courtney's legs gave way and he knelt on the ground. After that, he did not get up again. Courtney straightened his back and held on for over 10 seconds. Then, his head fell to the ground and he no longer breathed. As for the culprit, who handed him the military knife, he was completely dumbfounded. He could not believe what was happening before his eyes. It all felt like a dream. No, 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 no. This has nothing to do with me. The person who handed him the knife shook his head in horror and waved his hand. This is all an accident. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. It's him. It's all because of him that this happened. The person who handed him the knife pointed at Su Yun and shouted loudly, "You were the one who took the knife and extended it. Don't you know how to dodge when someone is charging at you?" Su Yun said, "You have no intention of dodging at all. You clearly want to use this opportunity to kill him. If you kill him, you can take over his position, right?" Su Yun's words left the person dumbfounded. "You can't just shirk responsibility. You did it, so you should take responsibility." Su Yun continued, "I'm not taking the blame. So many people are watching. I only kicked him once. Kicking him won't kill him. You were the one who stabbed him. How can you put the blade in front when you hand someone a knife? Oh, I know, you did it on purpose." If the blade was not pointed at them, Su Yun would not have kicked so accurately, causing Courtney to fall into him. If it's not your fault, then he can only blame himself for being unlucky. Su Yun shrugged. Baldwin looked at Courtney, who died in a pool of blood. His mind was blank. This was what he was worried about from the beginning, but it still happened in the end. Many people present seemed to feel sorry for Courtney's death. These people should have some real feelings for Courtney. As for those who were expressionless, perhaps they were even happy in their hearts. Natasha was one of the expressionless people, but she did not feel happy at all. Without Courtney, she had one less person who could help her control the situation. Of course, Su Yun and the others did not plan to stay in New York. Now, the only computer with the list was in Colombia, and Su Yun's target was Colombia. "Courtney is dead. I don't think we have any misunderstandings now, right?" Natasha said. "No one will pose a threat to your personal safety anymore. You don't have to keep holding a gun to the back of our boss' head, do you?" No matter how good a gun was, there was a possibility of it going off accidentally. Moreover, in such a tense situation, if Lin Ji's finger trembled, Baldwin's brain would explode. In fact, it was not only Natasha and the others who were worried about this matter. Su Yun and Lin Guo were also worried. Before they got the list, they still needed to keep Baldwin alive. So Lin Guo had quietly removed the bullets in the gun. Now, it was empty. Even if he fired, Baldwin's head would not explode. However, Su Yun and the others needed the deterrence of the gun, so Lin Guo had been holding the gun without bullets. Anyway, no one knew whether the gun was loaded or not. "No, no, no, never." Lin Guo shook his head. "I think as long as you do this, Mr. Baldwin will be very obedient, like an obedient puppy. If you don't do this, I'm afraid he will become like a Tibetan Mastiff and bite me." Anyway, he was calling Baldwin a dog in a roundabout way. Baldwin himself understood, but he did not say anything. Lin Guo had already slapped him. It was not difficult to give him another slap. Baldwin needed face in front of his subordinates. He could not give Lin Guo an excuse to continue trampling on his dignity and face. Chapter 3962. Now, these verbal insults were nothing to Baldwin. After all, he had already brainwashed himself with stories like the humiliation of kneeling. As long as he used these stories to brainwash himself, no matter who it was, he would no longer feel humiliated by these things. "We have done our best to cooperate. I hope you can show more respect to our boss." Natasha looked at Lin Guo with a slightly warning gaze. Although her voice was flat, it sounded a little threatening. Lin Guo, however, asked bluntly, "Am I not respectful enough?" I think I respect him a lot. At least I'm still letting him stand, right? Natasha wanted to refute, but she was suppressed by Lin Ge's aura. If I don't respect him enough, based on the fact that I can take his life at any time, he will have to kneel if I want him to. If I ask him to crawl, he won't dare to disobey, right? All right. Su Yun waved his hand to signal Lin Gu not to go overboard. Now that they were willing to cooperate, there was nothing more to say. They just needed to cooperate. Lin Gu stopped talking and nodded to signal Baldwin to make the arrangements as soon as possible. Baldwin glanced at Natasha, and Natasha motioned for them to get into the car first. Go to the airport now. I will immediately contact the people to arrange the flight to Columbus. Baldwin glanced at Su Yun and Lin Gu, as if to say to them, see, I am very cooperative, so you don't have to make things difficult for me anymore. Lin Gu was only responsible for controlling Baldwin with an unloaded pistol and intimidating the others at the scene. He didn't think much about anything else. Mr. Baldwin, since this is the arrangement, you should come with us. Su Yun motioned for Baldwin to get into the car with them. Baldwin nodded and glanced at Natasha one last time before getting into Su Yun's escort car. Lin Gu followed him into the car, his pistol still aimed at the back of Baldwin's head. Su Yun glanced at Natasha. Natasha understood what he meant. She waved for one of the people behind her to come forward. You drive. I will lead the way. Don't waste time. After saying this, Natasha waved at several people of status present, and several people quickly came forward. Clean up the scene. Don't alert too many people. Also, take care of Courtney properly. Natasha said, Courtney is one of the boss's most capable subordinates. You must not be careless. After this matter is resolved, the boss will definitely give Courtney a proper burial, so you must take care of Courtney. The dead couldn't speak. Whether it was a good urn or a good tombstone, the dead couldn't fight for them. They could only rely on the living to fight for them. After the arrangements were made, Su Yun got into the driver's seat of the escort car. Natasha also quickly got into the car in front. She immediately gestured for her subordinates to start the car. She quickly made a call to the airport. They had a private jet. All they needed to do was to book the flight route. Natasha, who was swift and decisive, quickly arranged everything. As long as they arrived at the airport, they would be able to take off at the scheduled time for Colombia. In the car, Lin Gu didn't need to continue holding the gun to Baldwin's head. Baldwin also didn't need to worry about his own safety. Because there was no threat to his life, Baldwin's various emotions slowly emerged. Courtney's death also caused Baldwin's heart to ache little by little. A subordinate who had followed him through life and death, a subordinate who was willing to do anything for him. Even though Courtney had many shortcomings and occasionally had ambitions that made Baldwin uncomfortable, in the end, he was still one of his most loyal subordinates. Baldwin knew very well that after Courtney's death, there was no one in New York who could make him feel at ease. Because he couldn't leave Natasha in New York to manage everything. Natasha was someone who had to be by his side. As for the other subordinates, no one could replace Courtney to help him manage everything in New York. Courtney's death was a huge loss for Baldwin. If he knew this would happen, he would have given the list to Su Yun and the others from the beginning. That way, he wouldn't have caused so much trouble. Now that Courtney had also lost his life because of this matter, everything had become a headache. Everything was a mess. Baldwin suddenly thought, this can't go on. If I let Su Yun and the others take the list now, won't everything return to square one? Wouldn't Courtney's sacrifice be meaningless then? Right. I can't let these two guys get the list so easily, and I can't let these two guys leave America alive. This was the only thing Baldwin wanted to do at the moment. He wanted to tear these two guys into pieces. Su Yun seemed to know how to read minds. He glanced at Baldwin in the rearview mirror and said to him with a smile, Mr. Baldwin, are you thinking about Courtney? Do you think Courtney's death was caused by us? So now you want to take revenge on me, right? Baldwin's thoughts were seen through by Su Yun, but he didn't dare to speak casually. I'm telling you, you can't blame us for this. The culprit is actually you. Su Yun, this is all because of you. If it weren't for you, there wouldn't be so many headaches. Baldwin frowned and looked at Su Yun. So, don't blame the death of your men on us. Su Yun, I'm also very clear about the situation. Colombi is your hometown. You're no different from a local tyrant there. So, I'm prepared for everything. Don't think of me as a fool. You're still thinking about taking revenge on us, right? Lin Gu glared at Baldwin. I think you really need to be taught a lesson. Baldwin lowered his head and remained silent. Lin Gu stared and said, Brother, I think this guy is tacitly admitting it. We'll definitely be in trouble if we go to Colombi. Baldwin, you know very well what our purpose is this time. If you're willing to cooperate, we definitely won't do those things that have nothing to do with us. Su Yun, but if you don't cooperate, then I'm sorry. I definitely won't let you feel comfortable. You can't bear to see the criminal empire you built collapse, right? Humph. Baldwin couldn't hold back and made a sound. This kind of disbelief came from the bottom of his heart. Baldwin really didn't believe that the two people in front of him could have such a huge impact on his empire. What do you mean? Lin Gu pointed at Baldwin's nose and said, You don't think it's a big deal, right? If you don't believe me, then let's try it. I don't mean anything, Baldwin said. Baldwin said, But the two of you want to destroy everything I have in America. Don't you think that's just a fantasy? Lin Gu really wanted to slap him. Baldwin's face showed that he really didn't believe the two of them at all. Baldwin, don't forget that your entire empire is a criminal empire. Do you know what's the simplest thing to do to destroy a criminal empire? Su Yun, it's very simple. It's to get rid of you. As long as we get rid of you, your men will be in chaos. What do you think? Baldwin's smile was gone from his face. You don't have to keep threatening me. I know very well that my life is in the hands of the two of you, Baldwin said. But if you say it again and again, the deterrent to me will only get smaller and smaller. You think so? I don't think so. Su Yun shook his head. I think that only when you know more about yourself can you really dispel the stupid thoughts in your heart at the moment. This can help you not to make stupid decisions when you reach Colombi. Baldwin was stunned. Su Yun could really see through everything. Because just a second ago, Baldwin even thought that as long as he reached Colombi, he would use the power of the country to completely detain the two of them. Even if he gave them a list, he would never let them leave alive, absolutely not. Baldwin wanted to let them know what the price was. This was called the price. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.